For the committee of the whole meeting for March 10th, 2026. First item on our agenda this evening is roll call.
Peraza. Here. Lancey. Here. Beck. Malay. Malone.
Here.
Solfa.
Here.
Wolf.
Here.
Barron. Here. Lehman. Here. Lohman. Here. Pieper. Fehrenbach.
Here.
Anderson.
Here.
White.
Here.
White is online, but Bob, you sound very quiet. Can you say here again?
Here. Crank up the volume. All right. Then we'll move on to item 2, which is a reminder to please speak into the microphone if you come up to use the mic. Make sure you get it adjusted and you can hear yourself in the background or see the little green light on it so that we get it recorded for the broadcast. Item 3 would be approval of minutes from February 24th, 2026. Any comments, corrections, changes? Can I get a motion to recommend to council?
So moved.
Second. By Solfa, second by Lancey. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I heard Bob. All right, then we'll move on to item 4, which is items to be removed, added, or changed. Do we have anything?
Yes, I'd like to motion to have 6.2 moved to the discussion.
I'd second that.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second to remove 6.2 from the consent agenda. Down to 7.7, so we can get all the other stuff done, and then if we're gonna have a discussion, we can do that. So that's where we'll move it. On the motion to change the agenda to 6.2, move to 7.7. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. And then matters from the public for anything that's not on our agenda tonight. Anybody here for anything not on the agenda? Okay, and we'll move on to the consent agenda. Alderman Barron.
The consent agenda reads as follows. Cow Executive Session Minutes, February 24th, 2026. Resolution 2026-33-R, authorization to purchase one 2026 Altech TA60 bucket truck from Altech Industries, Inc. Resolution 2026-32-R, approving the 2026 zoning map. Resolution 2026-35-R, accepting a plat of dedication of part of North Water Street. Ordinance 2026-13, declaring certain property to be surplus and authorizing sale. And Resolution 2026-36-R, approving a 3-month extension for the final plat of Main Street Place subdivision. I move we approve the consent agenda as read.
Second.
Motion by Barron, second by Solfa. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, then we'll move on to the regular agenda. Item 7.1 is Resolution 2026-34R, authorizing execute a 1-year extension of contract with Midwest Public Safety for body camera and in-car video cloud-based data storage through March 7th, 2027 for the amount of $20,592. I believe the chief is on his way up here to explain this one. Good evening.
All right, thank you. So we've had a body-worn camera program for 5 years now, since 2021, utilizing G-Tech body-worn cameras. Council recently approved us to transition to Axon body-worn cameras. I can tell you initial feedback is very positive, and the transition has gone very smoothly. So we're very happy with the new equipment and the new cloud storage service that we have. That being said, over those 5 years, we amassed significant amounts of body-worn camera footage and squad car video footage in our existing G-Tech cloud. The goal has always been to transition that to the new Axon cloud. Unfortunately, that is a very labor-intensive, time-consuming process. There is a service offered by Axon to do that for us. That service is backlogged 18 months and costs $50,000. So the decision was made, the videos that we've deemed necessary to be transported because we are statutory obligated by statute to retain many of these videos, we're going to need to continue to retain in GTAC. Unfortunately, we failed to budget for this, not anticipating the substantial workload that would be entailed in moving the video footage. That being said, I don't think we're going to require a budget amendment because we do have funds in other accounts with projected expenditures coming in well below what we had in there. So I think we'll be okay in terms of our overall budget.
Anybody have any questions, comments? Tim?
So with this being obviously a cloud-based system, you know, understandably, we're moving to another cloud-based system. Is the price tag for this different than what it was to store the video itself? And this is the price tag to hold on to the video in the meantime while we're not quote unquote signed up with them, but we still want to retain the video on their servers, or how?
Correct. So this is nothing more than cloud storage.
Right.
Our initial contracts with them included the body-worn cameras, our ability to add new video to that cloud service. This is simply just to house, I believe it's like 27 terabytes of video that we have in there.
Right, right. And so to give everyone some context that, you know, this is the slippery slope you go down with cloud storage companies, right? Because now they basically hold our video. And they kind of hold it hostage is what they're doing, you know, because we don't have it. We don't have it on premises. So we're kind of stuck in this regard in my case. So I agree that, you know, I think we have to do this to retain the video, or the ideal solution would be to order a server and be able to do, but GTAC's going to charge us $50,000 to even download it off, to basically take it off their servers early. They're going to charge $50,000 for that service, or that's an Axon service?
So that's an Axon service. GTAC will charge us in addition to that $50,000
Right.
to download it all for us and provide it to us in a file that, or in a format that we can give it to Axon to do the upload. So it would add up pretty quickly. With regards to putting it on a local server, we do have a server that we thought might be a suitable option for that to store and house it locally. But the big issue with that is this is evidentiary, and there is statutory requirements for audit trails and things like that that are built into the cloud system that we wouldn't be able to replicate on our local server.
Right. Okay. So moving forward, I would just want us to be cautious, right? And maybe talk with Axon, find ways that we can off-ramp video. Because this is what video's not getting any less, right? We're going to continue to amass data. There are ways that we compress the video. There's uses in AI, which I'm hoping that moving the Axon platform is going to cut down on the storage, because they'll only basically retain what we need them to retain. But, you know, we're not going to shrink, right? We're going to continue to gain in space needed. And, you know, all that is, and it's no one's fault. It's this industry. So you have, at the end of this rope, we're paying, you know, Amazon or Microsoft, right? Because these servers live in Azure or AWS or wherever GTAC or Axon has their stuff. So, you know, and there's companies in my field outside the body-worn space do the exact same thing. But, you know, like I'm saying, just maybe if we have a conversation moving forward with Axon, if there's any way we can get out of their cloud, you know, maybe it's a slow drip or something, but that would be very beneficial so that we maybe wouldn't accrue a large off-ramp fee or whatever in the future if we wanted to.
Thank you.
Kind of following on that, I was wondering, would it be a significant staff overhead to have a larger sort of server storage on hand for exactly this purpose? Because like this was 27 terabytes, which I mean, I don't need that much in my life, but that's not an outrageous amount, to be honest, especially in this day and age. So I could definitely also see the appeal of having that, at least have that capability on site, so we aren't as reliant on a outside vendor.
Well, I'll just remind that this is annual too.
Yeah.
So once you do that, like we can go out and get a 48 terabyte server today to hold on premises. granted, we don't want to have to manage an asset and back it up with power and have a rack for it to live in and all that. And that's the main reason IT is moving to the cloud. But in the video world, it makes a lot of sense because the data just continues to, you can go buy that for 12 grand right now and then be done with it, right? So it's just.
Another consideration is built within these cloud services, they have redaction tools for the video and stuff. So then we're looking at additional costs for getting third-party software to perform video redactions that we would have to perform when we get FOIA requests and things like that to process those. They also have a way to, with a secure audit trail, allow us to send video directly via link to people who are receiving video pursuant to a FOIA or other request. So.
Yeah, totally understand. There's just a cost of everything, right? Yep.
Totally agree.
Yep.
Yeah, our hope is that Axon will be our last cloud for body-worn camera footage, but yeah, you never know.
Well, and I will say, in the body-worn space, I mean, they own the market. They're a very good company, make a very good product. It's just when you start talking cloud and video, it's just dollar signs.
Anybody else with questions? Okay. Unfortunately, one of the things we have to do with this system is be able to store it, access it, and have a chain of command and safety. Anybody care to make a motion to recommend to council resolution 2026-34R?
So moved.
Second.
By Solfa, second by Lehman. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Okay, thank you. And we'll move on to ordinance 2026-009, granting a conditional use permit for government office and facility use at 812 Main Street. Who's on his way?
Good evening, Council. Yes, the item tonight before you is ordinance 2026-09. This would grant a conditional use to the Batavia Public School District to allow for the operation of a space or in a building at 812 Main Street. The district presently, under a rent-to-own agreement, is located in the 804 Main Street, which is the building immediately west of this particular property. That's part of the conditional use. Originally, at that time, it was a permitted use. The property was zoned light industrial. This particular property is presently zoned CC, community commercial. That was done in part to align the zoning with the West Town plan and the redevelopment goals for the area. The district is looking to basically continue the operations that they already have at the 804 building, but expand into the 812 building. That property currently also has the Batavia Youth Baseball Program that would continue to operate within this space, basically as a tenant of the school district if the proposed use and transaction of this property does go forward. So the Planning Commission did hold a public hearing. There was a number of speakers, including representatives of the school board, as well as some local residents, and their testimony is summarized in the memo and then also in the minutes, the draft minutes that were attached. The commission did have extensive discussion of the use, or the conditional use, and the conditions of approval. They did make a number of recommendations that included items related to the TIF and the tax status of the property with a government entity looking to purchase the property. Those items were reviewed by the city attorney, who did advise that those conditions should be removed from consideration. So the ordinance before you tonight does not include those. The commission did also make some recommendations related to the storage and other uses or other aspects of the property, like dumpster enclosures and the like. They did modify a condition that staff is suggesting with the ordinance before you tonight to be revised under your consideration, which would be to include a requirement for fencing along the 804 Main Street property. That property presently is mostly chain link. So the condition of approval would be that over a 2-year period that they basically replace that fencing with a solid fence. There's a lot of interrelated activities between the two properties. If the school district began to use this site in terms of access and how the yard is configured, where really it doesn't make sense to try and consider that a separate parcel for the purposes of screening and the other requirements within the zoning code. So we do recommend that inclusion within the ordinance for you tonight. Overall, there's a number of items to consider on behalf of the committee. This is, the advance of whether the proposed use aligns with all of our goals of the Westtown redevelopment, but then also the fact that we, from a policymaking standpoint, outside of the zoning determinations, the city council does have a working relationship with the school district and making sure that those, their goals and objectives can be met as well. So we do have the ordinance as drafted, including those recommendations. I did include a comment that the Plan Commission did feel that that their recommendation was based on the overall conditions that all of the conditions they were looking to have. But again, there's that balance for the commission and council to consider, or more so for the council to consider those other factors of the cooperation with the school district. So the applicant is here tonight, and I believe they do have a presentation as well. So if there's any questions of staff, I can answer those now or wait till after their presentation.
Alderman Fehrenbach.
How much is the current tax roll that would be taken off if the government entity is using it?
The tax bill? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I believe it's about $6,000 or so.
Okay.
Questions?
So this is one where they're doing the rent to own from Van D next door, and they're just going to try to buy this one outright, or it's going to be another rent to own, or?
So yeah, at the public hearing, they did testify. 804, yeah, it was a rent to own. That was about a 10-year period. That property transaction basically is on hold while they consider this aspect of it. But this property, they would be buying outright from the current property owner.
And even though it's labeled as, a government office, there wouldn't be, they're just going to use it for storage?
Primarily it would be storage in this building is what they testified at the Plan Commission. So really there would not be any increase in number of employees at the site or changes in the activity levels. It would be very similar, but they would have the additional indoor space of this building as well as the outdoor space of the combined two parcels.
But no impact on the space that BYB takes right now?
Yeah, so Batavia Youth Baseball takes about, I think it's 3,500 square feet altogether. So they would be maintaining that space. The rest of the building has basically, I think, been used kind of as intermediary storage for Van D as they wound down, but then also other tenants in the area. So basically those spaces would still continue to be storage operations, but they would be storing equipment for the school district.
You mentioned the 6,000 property taxes, that's the total that we would be losing on. Is that a different number from the 6% impact to TIF 4's revenues?
So the $6,000, it wouldn't all be the increment, but I think a lot of it is. I don't have that number in front of me, but the 6% would be of the total money that we're collecting from TIF 4. There hasn't been as much activity in TIF 4 in terms of redevelopment. We've had a few projects, mostly residential focused on Harrison Street. So that's been probably where most of the increments been generated. We do have some prospective projects, including the redo of the Elms site. But otherwise, there hasn't been a lot of permit activity that would otherwise increase the increments currently. So that 6% would be about that, around $5,000 or $6,000
Per year, right?
per year. Yes.
As long as we're talking about it, the old gas station near this property and the storage and the truck storage facility near this, is there any action there as well?
So it's still owned by the the same family that's owned it for a number of years. We've been working with them from a code compliance standpoint on getting some improvements on that site. They have mostly kind of storage and other light industrial operations in the rear with the storage area. And then the front, they basically transitioned back to the vehicle services, like the heavy vehicle services in that area. But there's not been, that changeover has been probably the most recent change in activity on that site.
Has there been, so that whole area, just having driven by it for years, there really has not been a lot of movement there at all for about, well, really 15 years, if I'm honest about it. So I know we have a TIF district there, but there doesn't seem to be a lot of action in that TIF district. So I'm wondering, given that we're now just going to take something that's been storage for 15 years and instead of doing anything productive with it, we're going to make it storage for the school district, which is fine. I mean, it at least it's getting use. Why do we feel that TIF district hasn't attracted any activity in all this time?
There's probably a couple factors with that. There's the holdings on some of that. There's been the redo of Main Street might have delayed maybe some activity. There has been some changeover, especially on the north side of Main Street, in terms of during the TIF, before the TIF was inactivated and kind of the start of the TIF, where some of those spaces have become more retail oriented versus industrial activity. But it is a challenge probably in some ways that Westtown is, it's a district of its own, outside of the downtown area. So that critical mass, that you might have with some other redevelopment activity might be harder to draw there. And there's really been few property. There's really only one kind of blank slate redevelopment site within TIF 4, whilst the rest would require probably some level of land acquisition and other, somebody actively trying to create additional redevelopment opportunity.
And I wanted to point out that Laura Matters moved her tutoring academy in there on the corner of Main Street and Mallory as well. There have been two owners of the building on Mallory who have over a number of years been making improvements to it. At first, it was somebody who was going to bring in his sign collection and have a museum there. Now it is a furniture manufacturer.
Yes, a furniture company is looking at potentially redeveloping that. We've been working with them on some site improvements that would become part of that. And that's not been scheduled for a zoning hearing, but it's basically kind of at a point where it's ready to go.
And then I believe the former Elms property is also located within this TIF district, and that was recently purchased. And they are going through an entitlement process right now for a restaurant.
We're in the progress they're in progress of submitting a complete application. We've gotten parts of it, but we do expect that to be something that happens, in the very short term in terms of getting in front of the Plan Commission and the council for the zoning changes that they would need.
And then there were two single-family homes also that were very nicely renovated, and there's some increment from that. And then due to the increment that has been generated, we're going to be able to complete a water project there, right, Andrea? A water main project on Mallory this year?
It's open Friday.
Yeah. So it really has had some activity, not as much as we would have liked, but there is definitely some activity.
Paper, did you have a question? You have your hand up? Okay, when you remember. Alderman Long?
Yeah, first off, I lost my voice on Sunday, so you're going to have to kind of bear with me here. I want to save most of my comments for after the presentation from the school board, but I also wanted to follow up on what Laura just shared with us, that a whole lot has happened there very recently, and it feels as if we're on the cusp of kind of popping off in that area with the Elms changing hands just within the last year or year and a half or whatever it's been. Even with the food pantry, which is not in the district, but is just around the corner from the district, that home immediately immediately adjacent to this property was recently remodeled very beautifully. It's a gorgeous remodel. That's within the district. It's really a great job. You may all recall that when I spoke to be appointed to this position, I spent a considerable amount of time talking about this district, about Westtown. It's something that's very dear to me. And that vintage shop that is on the north side there, I really recommend folks visit that spot. It's a really cool little antique vintage shop. So it does feel as if that area is now beginning to come to fruition based upon the plan that we put in place 8 years ago, right? The very robust, detailed plan there. So, but again, I'll save more of my comments for after the school board speaks.
Anybody else? Okay, if the district wants to have their say, they can come up.
All right, well, good evening, everyone.
Thank you.
Oh,
I'm the gentleman online. Thank you so much.
put me on the spot here to remember how to do this.
Joe, you got it.
Perfect.
Much obliged.
All right, very well. Well, thank you everyone for having us this evening and considering the district's request. It sounds like there's going to be a number of very important questions that I look forward to answering. My name's Patrick Miner. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Robin Schwartz. Our firm has been contracted with the district on this issue this evening and as it relates to the proposed real estate transaction at 812 Main Street. So just to address sort of some of the initial details, the district is the contract purchaser of 812 Main Street. And I say contract purchaser because there are some things that need to be worked out between the district and the current property owner in order for the district to move forward with the transaction, or at least to understand where they stand at the time that the transaction closes, in order to move forward with that. So, of course, one of those things is to come to the city, make our case as to why we believe this is an appropriate use for 812 Main Street, and to receive, hopefully, the city council's approvals and recommendations that the district be permitted to operate its government offices and facilities at 812 Main Street. Some of this has already been spoken about, but just to sort of go back in the time machine a little bit, the district has been a tenant at 804 Main Street since 2014. And in 2014, they signed a lease with an option to buy agreement for 804 Main Street. At that time, it's also my understanding that the district had conversations with the owner of 804, who also owns 812, regarding purchasing 812 Main Street at some point in the future, which of course is right now. And that's important for a number of reasons, which we'll get to in just a few minutes. But currently, the district has its maintenance operations at 804 Main Street. It actually is currently leasing some space at 812, where it's already using that space in order to store certain materials and district equipment. So we'll talk about this, and I'm actually going to ask staff to come up at the end of the presentation and really give you the sort of the overview of why this is so important to the district. But just sort of at the outset, it's important to note that the district's already in that area, has been in that area since 2014. In 2016, the city moved forward with TIF number 4, Westtown, which there's been some discussion about already. And, that, of course, brings with it certain additional considerations for 812 and 804 Main Street. Then in 2018, the city also amended its zoning ordinance to make government offices and facilities in Westtown a conditional use requiring the committee and city council's approval. And that's important because it's specific as to a government office and facility. If the district was just a private, entity or property owner, they could already be, for all intents and purposes, in that space operating their offices and facilities. It's a permitted use. They wouldn't have had to come to the city council in order to do so. As has also been talked about, Batavia Youth Baseball leases about a third of the building. The district intends to allow Batavia Youth Baseball to continue to operate there. Bless you. The district intends to use the remainder of 812 for storage, again, much in the way it's already using 812 and at least some of 804. This is just a quick overview. If anyone was unfamiliar with sort of where the property was located, thought it made sense to just throw up a quick aerial so everyone has a good overhead view. And then moving along to some street views and then to some views from inside 804 initially. The first thing that's important is the driveway that runs between the two properties. The district at the 804 property has a number of vehicle service bays on what's the east part of 804, that the only way to enter those vehicle service bays are from this shared driveway. And I think probably what happened and why the property is configured in this way when it was developed was, again, these properties were owned by the same owner. And it seems as though they were always meant to operate together. So it made sense to have a shared driveway. It's only one driveway to maintain. You can access both buildings. That, of course, now causes some problems because if the district weren't to acquire 812, there are potential issues with their ability to access those vehicle service bays for a property they already own at 804 Main Street. So that's sort of the first hurdle. The second, and again, this is what leads me to believe that, it was always intended for these properties to be, under one common ownership, is the fire sprinkler service for 804 Main Street actually runs through 812 Main Street. So again, if the district is not able to purchase 812 Main Street, there are a couple issues. Number one, they have to figure out a way to enter into some type of agreement with whoever owns 812 in order to move this fire sprinkler service from 812 to 804 Main Street. There's no saying what that's going to cost the district, in terms of financially in order to come to such an agreement. Because after all, under that hypothetical, they wouldn't own 812 Main Street. But then in addition to that, there's of course a cost associated with doing the work to move those pipes. The district estimates that would cost between $250,000 and $500,000. So again, this is sort of eating into, the cost associated with actually purchasing the property. The district's obviously in a far better position to own the property, not have to spend that $250,000 to $500,000 to move the line, when they can just use that money to own the property and continue to maintain the line for 804 where it currently is on 812 Main Street. Just another close-up view of that shared access, which again is important to get to 804 service bays as well as the rear, of both properties. We thought it was important for the council to see how the district operates and why having 804 and 812 is so important. So for my portion of the presentation, I included a handful of photos so you can see, why it's so important to continue to operate there. So as you can see here, the district uses currently 804 to store a number of products, paper products, vehicles, salt, everything that the district needs in order to continue to maintain its facilities. I actually learned this in this process, but apparently schools, they lack adequate storage space, which I guess if you stop and think about it, makes sense. We allocate that space to providing services to students, right? So I think this applies to other districts, but certainly here in Batavia, they're in need of a central location in order to store things and to get it, at sometimes quickly to its various schools. Obviously, Batavia is different than some other communities in terms of the logistics of getting things to different places, just based on the river and sort of those geographical challenges. But I'm told by staff that this particular location on Main Street is centrally located. They can get things quickly, conveniently, and easily to the locations that they need to get them to. Again, just a couple other photographs. There's a work area as well in 804. And then here's just a quick photograph of the vehicle service bays that the district uses to maintain, its fleet of vehicles. So I won't belabor this point too much, but just for everyone's information, the district's application was considered back on February 18th. The Plan Commission unanimously found that the district had met the standards for approval of the conditional use permit in accordance with the city's zoning code, and they included 6 conditions, which Drew mentioned in his staff report. And after that hearing, I had a conversation with the city attorney just based on some of my own concerns regarding whether or not those conditions were legally enforceable. And after those conversations, city staff took the position that they took tonight, that they are not recommending the inclusion of the property tax status condition or a future support for the extension of TIF 4 as a condition of the approvals in this case. And just 5 seconds about the law. The conditions must be reasonably related to the district's application. And without belaboring the point, the conditions for the most part deal with the effects of the district's operation at that location on the surrounding community, right? We don't want to put, for example, a manufacturing building in the middle of a residential neighborhood because that will cause all sorts of problems for those nearby residents. So the district believes that the remaining 4 conditions that are outlined on the bottom of the slide do reasonably relate to the district's application, and the district wants to be a good neighbor and a good partner to the city. So the district at that hearing tonight, if this matter is considered by the city council, we will support those 4 conditions. A 6-foot privacy fence along the adjacent residentially zoned properties of 804 and 812 Main Street. Again, that makes a lot of sense. The district doesn't want to operate there, in such a way that it has a negative impact on nearby residents. Just quickly, the district plans to use this property during school hours on school days for the most part, so there shouldn't be much, if any, effect on those nearby residents. Of course, we'll provide a survey and any easements where the city has existing utilities. Of course, we'll provide a proof of the deed for 804 Main Street once it's been recorded. Just as a side note, it hasn't been recorded because we're going to record it at the same time that we hopefully record the deed for 812 Main Street. And then finally, the dumpster enclosure. My understanding is that the district has to do that per city ordinance by, I believe it's 2034. Again, we understand that, trash and dumpster enclosures could potentially cause an issue for nearby residents. So, we're here to support that condition and include it in any such consideration by the council. So why is this so important? Why are we here tonight? As we've talked about, this helps the district to consolidate its maintenance operations on Main Street. They've been there since 2014. They always intended to buy this property. And, the city certainly took steps as it relates to the TIF and the conditional use approvals that were required to get. since that time, and that's why we're here this evening, because we want to go through the correct process, and that's the city's process. It's certainly within the city's purview to implement the TIF and update the zoning ordinance. So again, we want to partner with the city. We want to do what the city believes is necessary in order for the district to operate there, because again, in a big way, it helps the district to consolidate its maintenance operations. Next, as we've talked about, it's important for the district to maintain the driveway to access 804 Main Street, and then to avoid the unnecessary expenditure of public funds on moving that fire sprinkler service from 812 onto 804. And then finally, I think we're here for the kids, right? We want to continue to provide outstanding educational services in a fiscally responsible manner to the residents of the city and the district. So, we come here tonight in partnership. It certainly sounds like there's some concerns from the committee, which again, I understand. I'd be happy to answer, any of those questions that as it relates to what the district has to say or can control, I guess. But before I do that, I'm going to just ask staff to just come up and give us just a couple, again, sort of overview, high-level strategic points about the importance of this transaction.
Good evening, Council. My name is Tony Inglesi, and I have the privilege of serving as Assistant Superintendent and Chief Financial Officer for the school district. And I appreciate your time and consideration this evening. I'm going to try to make some points on why 812 Main is important to our operations. It's a pretty critical part of our operations backbone. I think the closest analog of this facility for us would be your public works facility, although certainly things there are a lot larger and more complex. It's centrally located for us, especially with a town like this, with a river running through the center of it and one bridge. It can be difficult to get to our schools quickly and in a timely fashion, and it's important that things are centralized. The primary reason being is that there are maintenance and emergency response that comes from there. Not emergency response like our first responders do, of course, but certainly things that are of urgency and require immediate attention. There's also technology and instructional logistics, and there's also district-wide storage and distribution. So I want to just cover what some of those things look like for us here this evening. So you can see here, there's a plow located in this particular facility, and you can even see some softener salt. Requires a lot of softener salt to operate our schools, and we don't have a lot of storage space within them. There's a maintenance bay there. You saw a photo of that earlier. We store plows and equip our trucks there back and forth as the weather is seemingly changing here. So those plows go on and come off as the weather dictates. We store salt there. We have HVAC, plumbing, electrical, and repair parts. We centrally operate those so that our maintenance teams are not constantly running to Home Depot or Menards, so that we can, although we are subject to sales tax, we don't have to necessarily worry about that as much. But when this heating system fails or a pipe breaks, this is where our maintenance team is getting the stuff quickly to get that going in our schools. We also do some receiving and sorting and storage and distribution of our technology and instructional materials. It's a centralized location where we can have massive amounts of things that we use in our schools, especially as we're getting ready to open school in the fall. They come here. Things like our Chromebooks, and we stage and program our Chromebooks there and then distribute them to students. We also do curriculum kits. We have thousands of books and workbooks, those sorts of things that need to be sorted and doled out to the individual schools, and so that they're ready to go in the fall as well. So the other thing that we also do, of course, is the storage and distribution. We keep a lot of furniture there, things that we don't necessarily have in immediate use, but we would store so that we can deploy over time. For example, you can see a picture of our desks here. These are perfectly good desks. They're just not necessarily ready to be used right now, so we store them in this facility as well. You can see we take deliveries here and we get things ready to put into our schools. We also have technology equipment that we happen to be using in this facility as well. We also have our custodial supplies and things like toilet paper, towels, things that our schools need, centralized storage and paper. Years ago, we used to store our paper in our schools and we'd stuff them into random closets that weren't necessarily humidity controlled. And then we'd put them into our printers and would never make it through the printer because they're warped. And so now all that stuff is delivered to this particular facility. We don't take massive amounts of deliveries so that we can send them off to our schools and the paper actually runs through the printers. So those are some examples of why this facility is important to us. So in summary, maintenance crews use this as a central base of operations, especially for snow, like our plows and our sweepers and the various things that we deploy to do winter operations. They all come from here and we can get them to schools in a timely fashion. We do staging for curriculum and for technology in these facilities, so we need the space to sort this stuff and get it set up and going. We store our furniture and equipment that we plan to use in the future so that we're not wasting taxpayer resources. And because it's centrally located, this is important in terms of how we get adjacent to our schools. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have, either for me or for Patrick or for Mark.
Questions? Baron?
Yeah, it sounds like, as you mentioned, this is a centralized distribution area that supports your schools, or all of our schools. How does all that get to there? Like, what, from a delivery standpoint, are these big trucks that are coming in here?
On occasion, yeah. We don't get too many semi-trucks, but usually, Mark would probably be in a better position to answer that question, but yeah, there's stuff that's delivered all the time.
Okay. And then, so your facility previously, that was what was on campus, on the high school campus, is that correct?
Yeah, what we call the old bus
green
barn.
building?
That's where we used to store our buses there.
And what is, is there any potential of what's being talked about of what's going to go there, or is it going to be replaced, or?
The plan is to demolish that building.
And then turn that into parking or
Probably
some
parking,
other?
yeah. That's our long-term campus plan for the high school.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question, or go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, first off, I think my first question is going to be for Drew, for city staff here. If a private company purchased the building and wanted to utilize it for their logistics operations, would that be a permitted use under the, it looks like the back half is zoned residential and the front half is zoned community commercial?
So basically, the property would currently have non-conforming rights because the property has been continuously used as basically a storage activity. If it was more intensified or kind of changed in the type of, you wouldn't be able to go from the current use of more of a storage activity to a more intensive, light industrial type use, because at this point the property's been changed from that original zoning. But somebody could continue to use it for storage if, as a primary purpose.
Okay, so as long as it retains its current use, it can stay that. But the moment it changes use, the rights would then cease for even a private entity.
So, the Batavia Youth Baseball has been in that front space for a good period of time. If they ever vacated, we would probably have to apply a situation where they could not expand into that space, outdoor storage. The conditional use for this would allow it to go into that space if they ever vacated.
So they could reclaim space that is not currently used as storage for storage, if we approve.
As a government office and facility use, but if, say, the school district was out of it, I think is what your example is, and somebody was looking to expand or use the building for industrial, they would only be able to use the space that presently is storage and not the Batavia Youth Baseball space.
Yeah, to kind of show my hand a little bit, I am extremely skeptical of this plan, and the reason being is because it's in Westtown. I hear the school district when they say they need storage space, like they made their case very well that centralized storage makes a whole lot of sense for their logistical operations. When I hear it, I then think literally anywhere else. Right, anywhere else, because we have an 8-year plan that we're on the cusp of realizing and turning this property over to an entity that will not generate foot traffic, will not bring in new commercial development, will not turn the back half into residential as we've zoned it, doesn't seem to meet what our plan is, and for those reasons, I'm extremely skeptical, despite being deeply entwined with BPS, both personally, property-wise, and my wife is a teacher at the district, and my kids, of course, go to the school, so I'm not unsympathetic to that. So I guess the question that I keep coming back to is why here? Why the one spot that we have a totally different plan for when we have a big town full of spaces? And I guess I would invite that question to be answered. Why this spot? The centrally located argument, I get it from a singular building perspective. This spot seems pretty far away from the east side of town, so I might need to be sold on how moving everything over here is somehow more centrally located than, say, moving everything over the east. But I would be interested in hearing the applicant's answers to why specifically the one spot we've picked for a different type of development.
I think I'll probably have to
Yeah, that's sorry, Drew, you're standing there as I'm going on and on.
There's a couple of answers to that question. And as Pat pointed out earlier, this plan was hatched in 2014, which predates the TIF from 2016. So this was a plan before the plan, so to speak. And that plan included, as was been demonstrated, eventually the second part of the facility. And I would agree that maybe it isn't perfectly centered in the community, but it's close enough. I mean, ideally, we could get it closer to the river. I mean, you're going to have to pick one side or the other, but that would put it square into the center of downtown Batavia.
Okay, and if I'm understanding correctly, part of the moving many of the storage and facilities to this building would allow you to build more parking by the high school?
Oh, the bus barn that you're referring to at the high school?
Yeah.
There is some limited storage in that space now, but that is slated to be demolished. And there are issues with the safety of that facility, especially when it comes to risk of fire. So we basically don't use it. It's not operable. There are some utilities that run through that space that serve in particular our stadium. And so there's tentacles essentially wrapped into it that we'd have to address. And while we're eager to do that work, we're just not in the financial position to do so right now.
I'll have more comments later, but I'll give it a minute.
Questions?
Okay, so clarification, if we don't give the conditional permit to the school district and this property goes up for sale, is it, remind me, what is it zoned for?
Community commercial and
Community
residential.
commercial. So it's not zoned right now for residential.
The
Strip of it, right?
The comprehensive plan designates basically the rear half of 3 or 4 properties along Main Street as future residential, with the north half or quarter, probably more closer to half, being either mixed use or I think on the comprehensive plan we designated neighborhood commercial, but community commercial is the zoning designation.
But that would require the building to be basically demolished and.
The West Town, how it's configured on the comprehensive plan, land use map, and the West Town area plan, and how the properties are referred to in the TIF redevelopment plan. The TIF redevelopment plan basically says that site could be incorporated. It looks kind of a larger redevelopment, including the greenhouse property that's located south of these properties. So it envisioned a larger potential redevelopment, kind of with additional land acquisition, which would probably require those buildings to be taken down as part of the process.
I know I'm feeling the tension with what the city's plan is for this West District, but also realizing the school district has been a good partner and neighbor in this part of town, and they've used this facility well. I live very near here. I drive and walk past here all the time, and I don't see a lot of disruption to the neighborhood. I've not observed large trucks coming and going, or anything that would be more disruptive than anything else happening in the neighborhood. But I do feel the tension from the city's perspective that we envision some future development in this area and how this would impact the property tax and the TIF district. So I hear both sides very strongly, and then just trying to balance. And I want the school district to hear, like, we see your need very, very clearly. And I hope you see our desire for what we want to happen in this part of town in the next, I'll use 10, 20 years. We would love to see this part of town redeveloped. So, I mean, if we move forward with this, I would almost encourage the school district to keep their eye out for something else in the industrial area that might meet their needs, so that this property opens back up to the city. So.
Yeah, you know, I also live near this area, and for those who are not aware, maybe those in the audience, you know, this used to be the west end of town, right? So it's zoned industrial, or at least it was originally. I know I personally thought the big transformation was going to happen when somebody bought and flipped the factory, the old factory property. You know, that's still empty. I think it's been, 7 years, something like that. Our existing business is there. And I just don't know how you unwind this, unfortunately. I completely sympathize. I mean, this should have been popping, right? Like 10 years ago, right? As far as getting new development. And the 715 vintage and the properties that are there are awesome. But the fact is you have a old auto clinic sitting right there with tanks underneath it. You have an empty factory like right across the street. That we have an unused warehouse, which I know the fire department at one point used when we were doing construction on the bridge. So there's a lot of obstacles still in this area. I wish something more would have happened like 10 years ago, because I think this would be a whole different conversation, or the school district would be considering somewhere else. So totally sympathetic and totally get it.
I was going to say, while I definitely see the location argument for this spot, have you guys looked at any other properties already? Because there are some downsides, I'd say, to this. These are older buildings. They have interesting fire sprinkler connections, which feels like it might be a maintenance headache down the line. Like, would a more consolidated location in a newer building, which we have a lot of in the industrial park, have those been considered at all?
The answer to that question is no. And here's why. It's because the district's already been at 804 since 2014. So you can imagine how difficult it would be to unwind their operations there already. And again, sort of getting back to, they're already operating at 812 and only learned of this requirement that, you know, it be approved by the city council as a part of their due diligence in this real estate transaction. So, you know, if this transaction weren't on the table, the district wouldn't have been aware that they needed to come to the city. And I think it's fair to say the city wasn't aware that the district was using 812 Main Street already. So again, just to summarize, the answer is no, but I think it's because from the district's perspective, this location makes sense and they're already there. So, you know, at least as an initial request, it made sense to come to the city to have this conversation and see if this was something, you know, the city would be willing to approve.
Okay.
And if I could just touch on one other thing just quickly. There's been a lot of discussion, obviously, about the TIF and the West Town Plan. In addition to the redevelopment aspirational goals of the West Town Plan and, of course, the TIF plan, there's also a lot of goals in that plan that revolve around using existing commercial properties as a way to buffer those heavier uses from the nearby residential properties, such as those directly to the west of 812 Main Street. So something we had spent a lot of time at the commission meeting talking about is how, in the school district's opinion, this is that use basically to a T, right? We have an existing viable commercial building that the way the district is going to use it, again, is going to be used on school days, during school hours, with the exception of an emergency, snow plowing, events like those where whatever vehicles are there will be there during the school day. And that obviously will greatly minimize the effect that the district's operations at 812 would have compared to perhaps a multifamily, development, right? Obviously, that would create, a number of other additional concerns that the district's proposal this evening does not come up with.
I have one question while you're up there. It's been said tonight that you're not going to record the deed for 804. I thought the district already bought 804. That the district owns it.
I missed the first part of your question.
That you're not going to record the deed for 804 until you purchase 812?
And that's just because we thought it made sense to record them together.
Okay.
The district does own 804.
Correct. That's what I thought. They had a 10-year lease on it and then bought it.
Correct. And
so you own that property. The district owns that.
That's correct.
Okay.
There's not actually, I guess, a legal requirement that a deed be recorded in order for someone to be considered the legal owner.
Okay.
You're just not the owner of record, is the way it's discussed, until you record that deed. So the district does intend to do it at the same time that hopefully they record the deed for 812. Obviously, if the district doesn't move forward with the transaction, we'll have a conversation with them about recording the deed for 804.
Being the only one that was here during that time frame, I can say that as soon as the district got into that and was going to lease it, I knew that eventually they would have the other one. And I think it was said during those discussions when the district leased that property that they were going to purchase it, and that eventually they would probably want to have the building next to it. I live, 600 feet away from this, so I know it intimately. I have a daughter that owns the house immediately across the street from it. So I know what kind of traffic is there now. And honestly, the traffic that's there from the Batavia Youth Baseball is 10 times what's there during the day with deliveries and everything else. The amount of cars, kids, bicycles, everything that goes in and out of there is a lot more than what the district has in there for traffic. Yes, I don't think it comes up with what we'd like to see happen in there, but knowing when we set the TIF district up that the district was going to be there in the middle of it already, I knew from the start that that was not going to end up being on the tax rolls, that property and the building to the west would end up being the district's home or one of their homes. And to me, unfortunately, it does make a lot of sense to be where it's at. Any of the mowing equipment, is that stored in there? And if the green bus barn comes down, does more of it move in there? I don't know how that's logistically set up. I mean, I see mowers run up and down Main Street quite often in the summer, but.
I'm Mark Anderson, Director of Operations for the district. I also live it. I've been there for 12 years. And to answer your question, yeah, mowings, all the mowing equipment's there. Yes, we would have to bring some of the softball and baseball type equipment out of there. That's really what's there right now. And, the band trailer gets stored there, things like that. But yes, when that goes down, yes, that would have to come over to 804 and 812 Main.
And the other question that I have is the west side of 812, that's a driveway or access. Is that ever going to be used? Because it's just been nothing in there for the last decade.
Yeah, and honestly, we don't plan on that because it's so narrow, and really all of the bays, the garage doors that face that way have been bricked in.
Okay.
So
that's
really,
what I thought along that side.
Yeah,
because that's one of the resident comments that I've heard of along that side, that if anything else happens there, that's a solid fence and at least 6 feet tall down that west property line.
Yep, it currently is right now.
Yep. And that wouldn't change. Alderman Lohman?
Yeah, it's been helpful to hear the presentation and helpful to, I was here for the Plan Commission meeting, so it was helpful to hear what you said there and what you said tonight to remind us of the needs of the school district. And I have a few questions about some of the uses that you currently use at 812. You mentioned that you're currently leasing there now at 812?
Yes, we rent a space in there.
So are you leasing all of the space there or just part of it?
No, really the middle half.
Okay. And the other part that you're going to gain, is that all storage or is that the office space?
That would be the kind of the back quarter half, and yes, it's the current owner's storage. So yes, we would just continue really what he's doing, but with the district equipment and supplies.
And the offices there, what will you be using them for? What are the plans for those offices?
Well, currently the offices are in the second floor above where the baseball's at. And at this point, we don't have really a plan for that. It's really been discussed, and we haven't had conversations with Batavia Youth Baseball if they would be interested in taking that as well.
Would you consider leasing it to a business if you're not going to use it? Is that something that you've
I'm
thought
getting
about?
a no from the CFO as well.
I'm just trying to think of more mixed use in that area.
Right now, baseball is using that space, and we don't see that changing for the foreseeable
Above
future.
office space.
Yeah, they don't happen to use that spot, but it would be hard for us to use it or a business to use it because you're walking through Batavia Youth's baseball
So
space.
it's the only access.
I don't
front
see
door.
that changing for the foreseeable future.
Okay, thanks for explaining that. So in my head, while I was asking all these questions, as I sat through the plan meeting and tonight, I kept thinking of another opportunity that the school district could possibly use this area for. Thinking of some type of student programs that could be brought into this area. You mentioned that you service vehicles and maintain them. Can there be some type of program where students are gaining educational opportunities and are learning about how to do that? Do you currently have that? Just some more community benefit that would give us more measurable outcomes for the school district to have it. So I'm not sure if that's at all been a part of your discussions, but just thinking, kind of high level about what that space could also be used for.
That's a great question. I love that question. Good evening, everybody. My name's Tom Kim. I'm the superintendent of the school district. I think that's a wonderful question because that's actually one of the big initiatives that our school district continues to move forward with in terms of developing career opportunities and pathways for our students. One of the things we're also focused on is student-paid internships. We recently actually just had this conversation, as if you were in our meeting, at our cabinet meeting. The problem with these particular facilities is that some of those experiences you're talking about would require us to develop classroom spaces, on-site learning conditions for students that are also safe for them. If you were to look at some of the Service Bay areas, those aren't really equipped to take student safety into consideration first. There are certain requirements that we have to adhere to when we do that with students in the space. One of the examples I'll give you is that's part of the reason why we are partnered with the Fox Valley Career Center. So we send dozens of students for specifically engines and auto mechanic classes over to the Fox Valley Career Center. And if you were to look at that facility, I think it would quickly, for the council, realize the kind of space we're talking about to have students learning in that kind of an environment. Another local example will be West Aurora School District. They recently purchased an entire auto body shop and then converted it into a learning space. It's really cool. And their program is robust. And again, those are the types of learning type of conditions and environments that would be required for that. But there are some other types of career pathways that we are looking to leverage and utilize for our students, including our own Rosalie Jones Administration Center. There are several of us that have already begun thinking of some pathways that we can offer opportunities for our students. For example, my office, Tony's going to find me some money, but we're going to pay some students, I think, I want kids who are interested in policy, government, and administrative public service. Would love them to be like one of my student paid interns. So we're looking at those things. That just is a little bit difficult because of spatial issues.
Thanks for clarifying that, and happy to hear about those paid internships to help our students. What kind of service and maintenance happens on site in this garage?
So specifically, all of our service for all of our vehicles is done at 804 Main Street because we have that bay set up for that already. So, you're talking anything from oil changes to any equipment to all of the trucks. weed eaters, blowers, I mean, you name it. That is all PM there and fixed if they need to be fixed because they went down. So our mowers, that's there. We have an inventory clerk who basically a request is put in and he fills the request, and we have delivery drivers who take that to the buildings. We do the same thing for school supplies. So throughout the year at the elementary level, if a teacher is running short on expo markers or a spiral notebook or whatever the case might be, she orders it, we fill it there, and we deliver it to the school. Those are a few examples of, I could go on. I think you kind of get the gist. So what we're doing there.
Okay, and for this new building, 812, it's strictly the storage. You're not going to be doing service or maintenance in there. It's just extra storage.
Correct.
Office space.
Yeah, correct. In one of those pictures you saw, there's a racking system. That is really the plan, is to get that over there, to have more space in 804 and to store more things, get it up off the ground, utilize, the square footage that's in 812.
Another thing I wanted to ask about was at Plan, they talked about landscaping or some type of beautification for the front of the building. Typically, when we have new property owners, that's something that the city tries to do to make the building more appealing from the curb. Is that something that you're planning on doing? From what I understand at that meeting, it seemed like you were appeasable to it.
Yeah, some of the challenges there is there's a lot of concrete. The whole site is concrete. So we would have to be creative with the landscape, which we're willing to do. And if you look at 804 Main Street looks much different than it did 12 years ago. So we have done those updates, and really, the plan would be the same thing, and to kind of get those buildings to match, right?
And I appreciate what you did at 804. From what it looked like and what it looks like now, there's a big difference. Thank you.
Nancy?
Yeah, I think basically all this boils down to is, besides what we've learned tonight from the infrastructure challenges that are present with these two buildings and kind of being conjoined without being conjoined, I think we're all familiar with having issues finding buyers for properties with property issues or whatever it might be, tanks, whatever. This sprinkler system would be exactly that. And so I think we really need to take that into consideration. I agree with probably everyone on council that, gosh, we want foot traffic and, what we all have in our mind's eye. And I couldn't agree more. That's what we want. But probably equally as important is the partnership we have with Batavia School District and what they mean to our community and, the ways that we'll work together moving forward as well. So, given the fact that they had purchased these before we even created the TIF, I'd love to go back in time and listen to some of those meetings when we were creating the TIF to see if we were aware of that and made all of this knowingly. But I think even now, regardless of that fact, the fact is they purchased before that, then, with the intent to purchase the second building, and then we created the TIF. So in my mind, we find ourselves in between a little bit of a rock and a hard place between what we quote unquote want and in my mind, what's right to do by our partner in Batavia School District. And, one of my questions was going to be the beautification side. I do understand the concrete aspects of that. Whatever can be done, right? Obviously those buildings are the buildings they are, and it is what it is. But, I'm sure as the new proud owners of the buildings, you're going to want to spruce them up a little bit anyway. So, I'll be in favor of this.
All right. Again, I apologize for my voice. I'm going to try to get through with this. The challenge I have with it is that approving this use in this spot and turning it over into a tax-exempt space means that we are giving up on the West Town plan. The West Town plan with 30% of the entire south side of Main Street being in tax-exempt storage space means that we no longer have those funds to redevelop the other properties. It means that we won't get our dream, as outlandish as our dream may or may not be. I don't know if it is. But it essentially means that the main properties in the main part of our district are now storage. I don't believe that the properties will ever turn over again, or if ever, within the next 40, 50 years. So if we're okay with storage in this space for 40 to 50 years, and that district not developing, then I think we approve this. There are 8 goals that we have. Establish land uses that are compatible with proximate existing areas to create a vibrant West Town. Doesn't do that. Provide safe, effective, attractive transportation. I don't know, whatever. Doesn't do anything with transportation, so that's a wash. Ensure development improves city services and facilities. A wash. Strengthen West Town's commercial presence. Very clearly diminishes its commercial presence. Storage is not commercial. There's going to be no foot traffic. It doesn't bring anybody to the area to buy, shop, create the vision that we came up with, our plan. Ensure environmentally responsible land use. I do believe the school district is very responsible. We are storing salt and doing oil changes there, but Ollie's garage across the street is also doing oil changes, so I assume they will be environmentally responsible. Provide open spaces to balance new development. Doesn't do that. Establish a range of housing opportunities. Eliminates an incredibly large amount of acreage for housing opportunities. So it's a major negative there. And it creates quality, attractive land development. It's storage. It's not doing that. It is not. So it's not meeting the goals we put in place. Time and again, I have been told and I've heard that we have a plan in place and we should follow our plan. Well, here's something that doesn't go along with our plan. I think it's important that we stick with our goals and we follow our plan. Now, if this does go through, I want to tell a very quick story about how my night and morning went. Last night, I had a cough. I took some cough syrup. The lights at HC Storm were on until 1 in the morning. They shine right in my bedroom. This morning, the garbage trucks came at 5:30 in the morning. They come 5:30 in the morning to the schools, right? The milk deliveries occur on the weekend. They occur in the morning on the weekends. Sunday mornings are when the milk arrives at HC Storm in the morning. We had our windows open last night, so the garbage truck bothered us. Normally it doesn't, right? I'm not trying to make this into an attack, but I do want to highlight that even though I love living next to a school, it's one of the reasons I purchased my home, it is not accurate to say that it doesn't have an impact on the neighbors, right? It doesn't impact things. When the new driveway goes in HC Storm, which will hopefully take out my lilac bushes, right? It is literally, they're putting the driveway on my property line, which is fine. It's going to be great. But there will be impacts to the neighborhood. So I share all this as a way of saying that, yes, the school district are great partners and we're happy to have them in town, and I do value everything they do for us. Storage space in a district that we hope to be commercial and residential, that is already mostly residential, is not a no impact decision. It's going to end our vision for West Town, right? The property's never going to change. There will be increased traffic and so on and so forth. And we're not getting any positive towards our goal that we had before. So 1, I'm going to be a no on this. 2, if it does pass, please take that very seriously into consideration. Concrete can be jackhammered, right? If you're going to take these properties on, hear that we're giving up something big and invest a little more than you might otherwise to help keep a little bit of our vision still intact.
I could just address just a couple of those points, just very briefly, because this actually came up at the Plan Commission meeting. There was a nearby resident who was present at the meeting, expressed some concerns specifically as it relates to garbage. And I learned at the hearing that at this particular property, the district has an on-demand, I believe is the term, garbage service. So it's not that it's set at any particular time, early in the morning, noon, night. They call and they show up, in a reasonable amount of time thereafter to pick up the garbage. So at that meeting, there was a discussion regarding that and a commitment by the district to make sure that the garbage, at least, things within our control, is picked up at a time that's appropriate, during the middle of the day, not in the, early morning hours or late evening hours. I also learned that the city actually has an ordinance regarding that very issue. So at least as it relates to the garbage, we're committed to minimizing the effects of that on the nearby residents.
Yeah, I would just add to that. I apologize about the garbage. It's an issue that we've had with this particular provider, and it's happening at a number of schools. And you just send us an email, and we'll address it with them, because it does violate the city's ordinance, and it's not being a kind.
Yeah, I don't share that to try to get any sort of
No, I
special
understand.
consideration here, but if you could also point the lights downward. But what I share that for is that, it's going to be fixed. I'm sure you'll fix it. I'm sure you'll make phone calls. And then a couple years will go by and it'll occur again, and then a couple years will go by. But the larger narrative I hope to share is that it's not, the impact to the neighborhood isn't zero. And we need to be very mindful and thoughtful of that. And not only is it not zero, the net negatives to our goals kind of compound on top of that. So that's kind of why I share that story.
I appreciate it, and I apologize for it. And whenever that happens, I would appreciate it if you let us know, because it's not just you that's being disturbed. And it's true that schools aren't zero impact. And as far as the lights, I'm excited to say that those lights at Storm are now a little more than 40 years old. Or no, let's see, they're almost 50 years old, actually, and they will be replaced this summer. We have a hard time programming them, and we're really excited about the fact that we'll be able to have better control over those in the future. Thank you.
Lehman?
Is it possible for city staff to at all explain how this impacts TIF 4 if the school district takes over this property?
Well, I guess strictly on a financial basis, it would reduce the amount of increment, because this property that is generating taxable value, it would be zeroed out essentially. Obviously, plans can always be modified and updated based on changing circumstances. I guess I would not take the position that that there's not or that the rest of Westtown couldn't continue to be redeveloped. As we've talked through, there's a couple different points of activity happening, but we might have to look at or kind of re-examine parts of what the plan says, and maybe adapt those in taking another look at it. The timing of it was about 2015 was when the plan was drafted ahead of the TIF 4 proposal. So I think it was on the radar, but it was, again, kind of a least owned situation. It could have been that the district never moved ahead with it. There was a lot of different things that could have changed on that. So I think that's something where the Westtown plan and really a lot of our planning documents, we do have a lot of flexibility in working through those things, and then taking another look if we need to if the council feels that we should, as part of this or after a consideration such as this, to look at those impacts. That's certainly something that staff could do.
But it feels like there would still be enough TIF funding to focus on some other parts in TIF 4 district. And you understanding, like, perhaps this part of TIF 4 we wouldn't be able to do anything with, but there's a whole lot of other areas that have a lot of potential.
I mean, for this particular property, it's a few $1,000s times the life of the TIF that's left. As was mentioned earlier, I think in the discussion by Laura and Andrea, a lot of the money that's in reserve right now on TIF 4 is going to be spent with that project. But we will probably have we do have other projects on the horizon that, with redevelopment, would be generating new increment, and potentially may have redevelopment agreements with those to facilitate some of those abilities to redevelop those parcels.
Thank you. I'm trying to view this from the standpoint of, we have multiple taxing bodies within Batavia, and we all try to find ways to work together. And sometimes there's give and take, like for our needs and what people need and what might benefit us in the long run, but also will benefit them in the long run. And so just trying to take all of that into account.
Thank you. Just to remind me, so currently the property that would be taken off the tax rolls contributes about $6,000, correct?
Thereabouts, yes. And then the property at 804 would be a separate amount, because right now I believe that's still being levied, or it's not tax exempt. But yeah, those two properties are about $6,000 apiece.
Okay, so if we were to not pass this, it would then require some sort of split of the fire system, correct? Which could be around $500,000?
Yeah, in terms of, that's what the district represented between $200,000 and $500,000. I offhand don't know what that cost actually would be. I mean, it would be extending basically a water main to each building separately, I suppose. So there would be a pretty significant cost.
So if we were to take that $6,000 and divide it into the $800 or the $500,000, that would be taken off. That would essentially take 83 years for that property tax to kind of pay that back. And if the school district was to have to pay for that, that would then go on to our citizens to have to pay for that. So when I kind of look at this, the give and take of, as Alderman Leah, I'm sorry, as Leah said, these are some of the things that you have to take into consideration. And for me, when I run those numbers and see that for them to keep where they're at that one building, $500,000 divided by 6,000, they'd be paid off in 83 years. I think that the school district has a lot more better things to do with $500,000, where we have opportunities to build around this area and just incorporate that building into it. We have an opportunity to make it, something more significant and even cooler. If we don't continue to just focus on one micro thing. So that's just one thing that came, to my mind as we're running through all these numbers and everything.
Yeah, just quickly, and again, I've lived around this area for about 20 years now, I think about it. So we used to have an old set of greenhouses behind all this that was torn down, and I think back then the thought was that'll redevelop soon. Fast forward 15 years, it's still in a good field. With these, there with a lot of youth baseball traffic, no need to reiterate on all that stuff. But when we talk about what's been the problem with this area, there's literally a junkyard next to these two buildings. So I feel like if this were to pass tonight, we need to circle back here and just take an honest view of this whole area, because as I'm looking at this map for the past hour, I'm going, okay, I know that's empty, I know that's empty, I know that's an eyesore. There's a lot going on here that feels like, I'm not going to say neglect on our part, I'm just saying this, I think if this whole setup was downtown, a lot of this would have been addressed already, right? So I think part of the issue here was it's been a little bit out of sight, out of mind. But I will say, same sort of symptoms, right? I mean, we have old buildings that are just storage now, within half a block of us, right? I mean, same thing, except it's, half mile that way. So I don't know how we're not going to solve it all tonight, but just, common themes, different areas, so.
Any other comments? Okay, thank you. I'll see if anybody would like to make the motion on ordinance 26009, granting a conditional use permit for government office and facilities use at 812 Main Street.
Alderman Wolf, we do have a number of members of the public who'd like to comment on this particular item. Would now be the appropriate time for them to do that, or?
Sure, they can do that. We'll go ahead and Solfa made the motion.
Second.
And second by Barron, so we have a motion and a second. Now we'll take public comment for anybody that's here tonight that would like to speak on this. Come up, just give us your name. And
Hi, my name is Kristen Garrels. I've lived in Batavia for about 12 years. I'm in Ward 3, and I know Mr. Malone and I have had some emails back and forth about this topic. I'm also a school board member. So I really feel for the city in this situation. I mean, I know that there were goals and hopes to develop these properties, but the district also had plans for these properties. This started prior to, the development of the TIF and the goals. So I'm sympathetic with the city, but I also know that the district, we're in a situation where federal and state funds are questionable right now. The district has invested in the building that they already own. They've maintained it. It looks nicer than it did before. They will do that with the second building too. And so while I understand the concern about having storage spaces in this district, these buildings will be maintained. They will be cared for. And I actually think that development around it could still happen. I was even thinking like Batavia Youth Baseball, somebody needs to put something next door that's like a convenience store or something where the kids can go and get a bite to eat. Or, I mean, I think there's potential still for development. And so I hope you take that into consideration and, you know, say yes. Thank you for your time.
So, good evening, committee members. I'm Raquel Gonzalez-Thomas. I'm a Batavia resident, and I'm a current member of BPS School Board of Education. I'm here tonight to ask for your support in approving the resolution for the district to purchase the building at 812 Main Street. I want to highlight that the district has been very willing to work with the city throughout the process. We've agreed to everything that was asked to us in the conditional use application, including adding the 6-foot privacy fence and building a proper enclosure for the dumpster. These items were thoroughly discussed at the Planning Commission meeting, and we've shown we're committed to meeting those expectations. Second, I want to talk about how the two buildings, 804 and 812 Main Street, really function as a pair. Families choose Batavia in large part because of our strength of our schools and being able to operate effectively in the essential of maintaining that. The district purchased 804 Main Street before the current rules about conditional use were created from the beginning, and acquiring 812 Main Street was part of the long-term plan for how this property would work. These two buildings were originally built together under the same owner. The layout of the water system, the driveway, and the overall design show that they were never meant to operate totally independently. Our operations rely on working them together as one space, and right now that's set up to be both efficient and cost-effective. If we continue using 812 the way we currently do, it would create major if we can't continue using 812 the way we currently do, it create major disruptions. We would likely have to look for another building entirely, and that would come with a much higher price tag, one that the district simply cannot afford. Finally, I want to speak to our track record. During the Planning Commission meeting, it was recognized that the district has always been a reasonable, respectable neighbor. We've taken great care of 804 Main Street, and we are fully committed to maintaining 812 Main Street to that same level of care. I thank you for your time and consideration. I respectfully ask that you support in approving the resolution and continuing our collaborative relationship. Thanks.
Good evening, Council. I appreciate all the time and effort. My name is Craig Meadows. I am unfortunately, to a certain extent, not a Batavia resident, but as I am on the school board, I am within the school district's boundaries. I am currently the board president as well. A couple of things I wanted to just point out, and I'm not going to belabor too much of what was kind of discussed before, but I'm going to kind of add a little bit of color and a little bit of the story behind some of the things. So, for example, one of the things that was mentioned was kind of this infrastructure and this drive. I want to kind of point out that as an architect that works primarily in the municipal world with school districts and municipalities and police stations and fire stations and libraries, I'm in a lot of these meetings a lot of the time. So I know how this kind of goes, and I understand that there's a lot on your shoulders trying to figure out how to balance all the needs of the community while being good neighbors and good partners to your fellow taxing bodies in the area. So I want to start out by just saying I very much appreciate the robust conversation you guys have had on all sides of that. That's something that we strive to do at our board as well. Part of that thing about that infrastructure that's there is I'd also like to point out that we already own 804. We're not going to be going anywhere most likely anytime soon. So that already makes a little bit of a complication in the development of 812 because half of that is already taken and you need a certain amount of mass to develop as you guys have intended. This is things that can be worked out over time. I understand, and that what you're considering may affect that. But I want to also point out that if that property likely does go to someone else, just as a matter of fact, we'll have to develop an easement of some sort between those two roads, because you cannot inhibit our access to our facilities. So therefore, that minimizes the attractiveness, let's say, for another vendor potentially coming in there to utilize it. That's not a threat or anything, because I'm not in control of that. I just want to make sure that that's kind of a part of that. The other point is that we do recognize that schools and our facilities do have impacts on the communities. We hope for the most part they're very, very positive. But occasionally there are things that we need to work on, and we'll commit to continue to work on those as we need to. But so does any other occupancy that may go into that space. So that may fall entirely within the by rights usage or permitted uses of those facilities. So just keep that in mind. And then the last thing I'm going to close on is a little bit of the stories. One of the things that the district enabled that we're very, very proud of as a part of our effort to make sure that every child is reached and every child has an opportunity to learn, but also has access to the things that they need to learn. So about maybe 4 or 5 years ago, we enacted and approved as a board effectively a elementary school supply program. So no students, if you've been into Jewel, and I remember the time you go into Jewel or you go into Target, and there was a list hanging on of all of the Batavia School District things you needed to buy for your kindergarten or through 5th grade, that's not there anymore. Because we don't make anybody buy pencils and papers and pens, whether you can afford it or not. And that's an important ability for kids to be able to engage in their learning without having to worry about other things. Our ability to provide those in time so teachers don't have to store as many things in their rooms. When we have spaces to store, that creates opportunities for students to learn in other spaces that are currently storage. So it's a zero-sum game with schools. You have to be able to give up space to be able to create space. And we just don't have that right now, and we're not in a position to purchase outside of this really, and there's been a lot of discussion about this, how critical it is to our mission, because we know it's going to take up valuable resources that we could otherwise be utilizing to things. And as you guys are aware, we are doing a number of projects to improve our schools within the limited finances we have, because the community chose not to finance a referendum. And that's fine. That's what the community chose to do. So we have to live within our means. This allows us to live within our means because we have to be extraordinarily efficient. We have a very lean staff. We hired about 2 years ago a maintenance tech so that we would not have to wait 2 or 3 hours for a maintenance person to come on to fix our 50-year-old mechanical units, to provide critical equipment that we cannot always get on equipment that you can't get anymore. So we have to buy multiple of them and we have to store them. A lot of these things have to be bought in bulk. For example, the kids' supplies. We have to have places to store them. So there are real dramatic effects on our ability to maintain an education level and a right of reliance on our teachers and staff and students to get the education that they have. So I just wanted to provide a little background, because sometimes it's like, oh, we're talking about snowplows and ice and lawn mowing and things like that. They all have a critical impact on our ability to make sure kids get what they need when they need it in a way that makes the best opportunity for them to learn and to not sweat the small stuff. So thank you very much. I appreciate your time and effort for tonight. Thank you.
Is there anybody else? Your Honor?
Yeah, I certainly want to go on record as encouraging the council to do what the school district is requesting here. I say that because this is not anything new in Batavia. This particular piece of property was kind of a spinoff of the furnace or the Lindgren's Foundry property, which was on Main Street. And I believe it was originally put out there because it was at the edge of town, and everything that was going to be going on there was all smoke and all kinds of fumes and everything else. And so they built themselves out there, I believe, in the 1920s. And that's when they started making castings for a variety of products and whatever have you. And the thing about it was built on the edge of town to get the fumes and the smoke and everything away from what was then the rest of the community. And I think over the years it did that. a few of us in this room can remember, two of the biggest fires we've ever had in Batavia were both across the street from this particular piece of property on the Lindgren's Foundry property. They've had some huge fires out there, and that's created some, I'll call it urban renewal. That goes back into the 1950s when we started having the fires out there. So then eventually the Lindgren's Foundry closed, and it became kind of an empty place, an empty shell that sat out there for a number of years. And when I was first elected mayor many years ago, one of the problems we had people going out there and trying to encamp themselves in the building. We had drug deals going on inside. There was all kinds of crazy stuff. That building, now fortunately it's been bought and purchased by those who are trying to turn it into something good, but this is right across the street from this particular piece of property. And that particular, the Lindgren's Foundry got there because it had a railroad track running by it, and the railroad track, I think, goes pretty close to where this piece is, and goes down, and we've gotten rid of the railroad track now. So, I mean, we've done a lot of stuff, and there's some areas of town you aren't going to totally clean it up with one swipe. And I think with giving this over to the Batavia School District will be a major step forward in helping us control it for today, and probably more importantly in the future as we go forward. Thank you.
Anybody else got any comments? Not. We have a motion and a second to approve this. Roll call, please.
Barraza. Aye. Clancy.
Aye.
Beck. Malay. Malone.
No.
Solfa.
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
Barron.
Aye.
Lehman. Aye. Lohman. Aye. Pieper.
Aye.
Fehrenbach.
No.
Anderson.
Aye.
White.
Aye.
And 2.
Okay, that passes. It'll be on the next city council meeting. We'll get that passed for you. Thank you for your time. Okay, we'll move on to item 7.3, which is ordinance 2026-11, temporarily pausing TIF for TIF 7.
The red button at the top.
Oh, here we go. Thank you.
Sure thing.
If I'm on council, I'll be there to remind him.
Right.
All right. Good evening, council, mayor. Ordinance 2026-011 is basically canceling the previous scheduled public hearing and temporarily pausing TIF number 7, which is the process to allow the city additional time to complete our due diligence and ensure a thorough review before moving forward. The pause gives staff the opportunity to review financial assumptions, development potential, infrastructure needs, and alignment with city planning to make sure any future action is fully informed and responsible. Staff and I are available to answer any questions that may arise, whether it be here tonight or just over the course of time via email, phone calls. But we do have Scott Buning here, myself, and Laura. We can also address questions here at tonight's meeting. But again, there's no financial impacts at this point because TIF has not been established. This has just been a proposal, some research that's going into this, but there's no financial issues at all at this point. So we just want to take some more time to do some due diligence and make sure everything is aligned appropriately.
So what type of due diligence are you guys performing right now?
Yeah, so most of the due diligence is just really reviewing financial feasibility, and like I said before, potential items like infrastructure and the type of developments we'd like to see in Batavia and what could be supported via this particular proposed TIF.
And just to further answer the question, we know that City Council's vision for this project is, it's going to be probably one of the biggest developments that has ever happened in our downtown. That it's going to be composed of couple hundred or more apartments, market rate. That it's going to include some component of commercial spaces, but also a much needed public parking facility as well. And so what we're doing at this phase is trying to determine, and we're working with financial advisor, and we've had multiple meetings with them, and working with the other property owner who has provided pro forma information kind of at a high level right now, because once you do put those elements together and you've decided a financial construct for making that project happen, on the part of the developer, they're going to have to make an enormous investment in turning that into an actual conceptual plan to bring back to City Council. And one of the things that we've learned over the years with TIF is that you really want to have your project like ready to go when the TIF is implemented, because you only get that 23 years. And every year that you miss on a project could be a significant amount of increment that could have been put toward either this project or some other great project that could happen in an adjacent area. And so that's the reason for the pause. We're fairly confident that toward the end of the year, we'll probably be ready to implement that. And that's probably when a developer is going to be ready to head into the next year's construction season and get a project underway. But a big element of that will be how we will pay for the public parking structure, because we're looking at that if it's going to service both overnight parking for the apartments, but also have spaces to service all of our businesses located in the southwest part of our downtown. It's probably going to be north of 400 spaces. So that's going to be a significant cost, as we have seen construction costs just escalate at an incredible rate in recent years. And so we're just trying to make sure that we're bringing a solid financial plan to the city as we embark on this very large and important project for our downtown.
Okay, so I guess I get that part of it. So up to this point, we haven't really had, I guess, just for clarification.
Sure.
So you guys are trying to figure out what pieces would be developer responsibility and what pieces would be city responsibility?
It's more so the developer
development would go there.
Sure. It's more so on the part of the developer to, on their side, they had to study what are the potential revenues that will be generated by this project and what are their expenses going to be. They also have to determine what their capital stack looks like and what proportion of the private construction is going to be relying on outside investment, so bank financed part of their capital stack. On the flip side of that, they're also looking at, based on what they estimate the final value of the private construction to be, what assessed value will that end up being? And then based on that assessed value, what is the increment that would be generated, and whether there is any gap in between where there is if there's a gap between the market rate of return and what's being generated by the project. That's what they are going to request as an incentive, because if it's not going to make a market rate of return, they're not going to be able to incentivize the private financing side of it. And so they came to us with that sort of their initial analysis, which showed that there was a gap beyond the incentive. I'm sorry, there was a gap beyond the increment that would be generated by the project. And so we're kind of working together hand in hand to try to solve for X. At the same time, we're working with our financial advisor to say, what are the sources of revenue that could be generated on the city side, in addition to or exclusive of the tax increment that could be used to finance the garage. So for instance, you could finance it with, we probably will have to issue some type of bonds in order to pay for that public parking structure, but we need to service that debt. So where does that revenue come from? So we're just kind of looking at that element of it as well.
So you guys are working on, with a developer, creating what would be a financially feasible and financeable plan development.
Including each party's financial advisors as well. So they're important partners in this as well.
You don't want to start the TIF before that's ready to go, because what'll happen is instead of having 23 years to get it, you end up with 20 or 18, and then we can't come up with the money to do it.
Yeah.
And that's exactly right. And Laura, thank you very much for bringing that up. And Alderperson Barraza, I appreciate that as well, because as you can see, as we kind of outlined with that, is there's a lot of moving parts, and kind of bringing those parts together is what's going to essentially help us be able to bring a project to fruition. So we want to make sure, again, going back to that due diligence, that we're looking at all the financials, crossing our T's, dotting our I's, and making sure that everything is looking good from both the TIF as well as the project for both the city as well as the developer. So this is kind of a staff type of decision to make in order to make sure we are being good stewards of this whole process and to make sure we can move forward appropriately.
You know, I just pointed out the obvious. I think the discussion we just had prior to this conversation is kind of indicative of why you want to wait until you have a project lined up before you establish a TIF district.
We thought we had property available for that, Jim.
Yeah.
We really did. I mean, we thought we had development. We actually looked at some plans that were there for it, and then, you know, the owner didn't want to sell for what the buyer wanted to get it for, to be able to afford to do the project, and the first big project fell through immediately.
Are there any constraints that are currently part of our downtown development plan that could be contributing to some of this challenge, that maybe you need some sort of blessing from council to be like, maybe try some other opportunities?
Not at this time. I think that, in fact, the downtown plan has very much helped to bring this project together, and it's been very supportive of the plan.
I would concur with that. I mean, that was part of the whole purpose of doing it, is to make sure that, you know, developments that we're attracting and trying to incentivize are things that we want in the downtown. And this project area would be exactly that. This is perfect for what the plan is anticipating.
I just want to make sure, because I know that one comment that has been made in the past is sometimes in order for the numbers to make it right, and I know this was a very big discussion during the other development that we had talked about, people were like, that's too high, that's too short. So I just want to make sure that we haven't backed ourselves with a plan saying we're capping it at a certain level.
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a matter of the limit of the increment that has been identified that could be generated by the project. It's not anything that is on a policy side. We're having to, we're mathing it. It really is just how the numbers are coming out. So
I know that the more opportunities to rent something, that's more money.
Yes.
That helps with the math.
And then also we have to look at, are the assumptions that they're using correct, right, too? So looking at what they're identifying as the rental rates for certain types of apartments with certain types of amenities, and then also looking at identified expenses and their expected tax level. Some of the developers that we've worked with weren't as familiar with Illinois taxes as they are with taxes in a different state. So those things.
So completely understand why we're pausing this right now. I guess I want to put a little more pressure on what does this timeline look like moving forward, because I'm hearing end of the year. If we're talking end of the year, construction costs are already up 6 to 8%.
Yeah.
So we may not have a project at that point if we can't get the math to work now. So what does that timeline look like now on what are we doing next, and when is that coming back to us?
So we would probably look to be setting up the public hearings probably October, November-ish of this year. And then you guys would be passing the ordinances in December, January timeframe. Parallel with that, we're working on a redevelopment agreement and passing that back and forth 12 times until that 75-page document gets into shape. And then you'd be passing that at around the same time. And then they're going through the review process with Plan Commission after that in order to be ready to go under construction next season.
Is there any reason why we're waiting until October, November for the public hearing?
We don't
Seems
want
like a long
to,
time.
we want to make sure that we have a project. And right now, because there's a gap between the incentive that's needed and the estimate of the amount of increment that can be generated, we would have to supplement that with the general fund at this point. But before we get there, we want to know, what can we do to work on that gap to close it so that we're not having to, in a TIF district, reach into our general fund in order to do this project. And Scott has his hand up.
Yeah, one other thing is, part of it is the TIF district, if it's created before the end of the year, we lose a year of TIF increment. So if we actually have it where it's implemented in January, then we gain that extra year. So that's part of what the math is also, right? Yeah.
Because again, it's 6 to 8%. It's gonna, and that's why I guess my question is that what is that gap right now? Because it may take a little bit of general fund to fund that. I guess that'd be my question. What is the gap right now?
Right, and that's the number we're still working on between them and us and our financial advisors on both sides. So that has not been settled yet.
Can we talk more candidly in executive session about because obviously we're talking a lot of generalities here. Like, what are the numbers? What was that gap? And
There isn't a exception to the Open Meetings Act that would allow us to discuss those in closed session unless we were purchasing property, and we have already done that.
okay, so what's the mechanism to involve council in this?
What we'd like to do is complete the financial analysis, and so that we know what the numbers are. And I don't think it's helpful to publicly
you mean our
discuss.
due diligence, our side?
Yes.
Okay, I got you. Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely, 100%.
Yeah.
And there's a redevelopment agreement that's going to have to come to you as well, and that's going to have all the terms and limitations and everything else. So, I mean, ultimately, it's going to be approved by council, but.
So basically, they gave us a gap. We're double checking that gap. We're going to come to, okay, is there things that we can move in your design or, okay, I got you. Okay.
Exactly.
So, okay, so just to understand the process then moving forward and next step. So once you guys have done and gotten, say you get to a point where we've run these numbers, but there's still a gap, then what is the decision-making process moving forward from that? Because is that you guys making that decision or are you bringing it to council?
It's you. It's a policy decision.
Okay.
That's all fine.
I completely agree with pausing it because, again, I'll reiterate, we're not the Bank of Batavia to fund these things. And when people, this is basically them already coming to us saying, we want more money. I think it's basically what's happening right here. So pausing it is fine. Second point is, for anybody watching or listening, to the extent anybody's paying attention about it, what's the boundaries for TIF number 7? What are the boundaries?
So we're looking at the property south of Wilson Street, north of Union Avenue, west of South River Street, and east of South Lincoln Street.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And there's a link on the website to show what the borders are for that.
That's correct.
And if we do create TIF 7, we will also disband part of 3?
Yes.
There's some of that will
That
go
is-
back, that the other taxing bodies will get their money early on that, because we'll get rid of part of that.
And I do believe, and Laura and Scott, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but the objective also is to remove some of the residential properties out of TIF 7 as well, the proposed TIF 7 as well.
Yeah, I'll just add, I totally hear you, Sofa, in terms of we're not the Bank of Batavia, but, I think what this council is stressing is, you know, we know this is a big deal. I think this could be a catalyst to a lot of things in this town. So we just want to be aware. We don't want anything to slip away. I know you guys don't ever intend to do that or want to do that or mean to or whatever. I think that's where some of the concerns come from. We just want to, I don't care if it's, you know, umpteen million. We just want to see it in front of us and then be able to say no or whatever. This is crazy. But, you know, everyone wants to be able to swallow that pill themselves, I think.
And we do appreciate that support too, because I mean, at the end of the day, like you mentioned, it is a catalyst project and it's an awesome site. It's perfect for our welcome into Batavia. You know, this is not smack dab in the middle of central Batavia. This is right on the kind of the outskirts where we want to drive traffic. And I think us doing this due diligence and being patient, but also having the support of city council, you know, from here onto the time we actually will need to, you know, make those decisions. It makes us feel better as staff to continue to push forward with this, you know, this project and the whole TIF proposal as well. So we appreciate that.
I just want to just reiterate, yes, it's a huge catalyst for our downtown, and we are getting something out of it. We're getting parking, like that's huge also. So there's a lot of investment that the city is doing. So we might not be the Bank of Batavia, but we are heavily invested in this project.
We're also a property owner in the project too, that we've already invested in. Don't forget that. Okay. We will need to make a motion to recommend to council ordinance 2026-11, temporarily pausing TIF for TIF 7.
So moved.
Second.
By Lancy, second by Lehman. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Alan,
Yes.
may I make a suggestion that we move 7.5 up, since we have people here who've been waiting patiently for 2 hours for this one?
All those in favor? Aye. Okay. Thank you. Now we'll move on to 7.5. The ordinance is 2026-10, amending Title 6, Motor Vehicles and Traffic of the City of Batavia Code and ordinance regulating e-mobility devices. And I almost ran one over on Main Street on the way down because there was no lights on it. If it wouldn't have been a white bike, I would have hit it. Because the driver was all in black and no lights.
All right, so as we discussed at the committee a few weeks ago, we feel it's in the best interest of the city to consider regulation of e-bikes and other e-mobility devices. Again, just kind of rehash some of the reasons that we think this is important. Certainly, we want to improve public safety, try to avoid those incidents that you just described in the future, reduce rider confusion about regulations, integrate micro-mobility devices into the transportation network, create opportunities for public education, provide our officers with reasonable enforcement options, and then define and regulate devices that are currently unregulated by state statute, which is a big problem for us. So just give a little background on this ordinance. We drafted and reviewed this with the city attorney. It does follow guidance pretty closely that's provided by RIDE Illinois. And it was reviewed by the Batavia Active Transportation Commission, many of whom are here today and in support of this ordinance. Touching on the ordinance specifically, it does closely mirror state statute for e-bike definitions and regulation, defines and prohibits e-motos, which are the devices we talked about of greatest safety concern. It defines a low-speed electric scooter and creates 2 different classifications. It also defines micro-mobility devices and creates 2 classifications. Requires helmets for riders under age 16. There are lighting requirements at night. Regulates scooters and micro-mobility devices in a similar fashion. Goal there is to reduce confusion. One example where they're regulated similarly is if the device is designed to go less than 10 miles an hour, they can be ridden on a sidewalk. Devices that go in excess of 10 miles an hour up to 20 miles an hour are prohibited from sidewalks. The scooter age, which we discussed, aligns with state statute, which is 18 years and older. For Class 1 micro-mobility devices, age 13, we're talking with those devices, that's your electric skateboards, your hoverboards, your other lower speed electric devices, often designed and intended for children. And then your Class 2 micro-mobility devices are for 18 and up. Adherence to traffic laws is necessary if the device is ridden in a roadway, and there's a prohibition against reckless conduct. We did make sure that we exempted motorized wheelchairs and other devices like that. And then per council's request, there are low initial fines with increases for repeat offenders. And certainly officers also always have warnings at their disposal for first-time offenders or even repeat offenders if they believe that a warning is the appropriate way to mitigate an issue and try to prevent reoccurrence. Lastly, there is a potential for parental responsibility for knowingly allowing minors to engage in some of this behavior. So, any questions on the ordinance?
Sorry, my voice is extra gone now. So on the, first off, I like it overall. I think it's walking that thin line. I would be interested to hear from some of our community members on their perspectives, knowing that they have more expertise than I do. My one question would be for the Class 2 e-scooter. We have in here that you must be 18 years of age or older, which I understand is state law. Does it make sense for us to include that in our ordinance or to allow the state law to regulate that? And if that law gets amended, we wouldn't then have to amend our ordinance. Is my question making sense?
It is. So currently there is no Class 2 because the state only defined a low-speed electric scooter as a device ridden by capable of 10 miles an hour or less. That's why we were afforded the opportunity to create a second classification for those higher speed scooters that go up to 20 miles an hour. So we would need to regulate that. I do agree. If state legislation changes and statutes are different, then it may require us to look back at our ordinance and make some modifications to mirror state statute. So.
Kind of along the same lines as Kevin, some of the scooters are only able to go up to 14 miles per hour. And I'm not sure if that's really clear here when we're defining the low speed scooter. So can you speak to that a little bit more?
So if the device is capable of more than 10 miles per hour, then it falls into that Class 2 scooter speed. Yep.
Yeah, I almost feel like this is odd that there's an 18-year-old age limit for something like this when, I mean, you have a kid go drive an automobile at 16 and seems like you should be able to drive anything with an engine at that point with the proper permit or whatever. So it's a weird one for me that the state even has that law being 18. So, I mean, I would maybe second Alderman Malone's in like, hey, let's leave it alone in the hopes that they change that to 16 and then we can then move ours. But I don't know, that's an odd one that's even out there.
Yeah, I agree with you. We conferred with legal counsel on this several times, and their advice was that we needed to adhere to the state statute on the age for scooters.
It's a nuance. Okay.
Follow up. I remember the last time that we talked about this, we asked how that would look since like half of the kids in Batavia have e-scooters that are under 18. And I remember you saying that you wouldn't be targeting every kid on a scooter. It's just if they're driving recklessly or violating something that's extreme. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, our goal here is to educate kids. You know, most of these children have no idea because all of their friends have scooters at this point. The devices have really proliferated throughout society. So our goal is really to provide education to both parents and kids, gain compliance, and in terms of going out and searching for specifically scooter violations. No, we're really focused on egregious conduct, safety issues, unsafe riding behavior. Those are the things that we're going to be focusing on. It's things that drastically affect public safety.
Abby had a question too. I'm looking it up here. It was about the difference between the I'm saying that wrong, the mobility devices. Just looking it up here, sorry. Are all e-scooters micromobility devices, but not all micromobility devices scooters? Like treated as scooters?
Oh, no, they're separate. The micromobility device definition is essentially a catch-all for devices that aren't otherwise defined. So that's where you're talking your hoverboards, your electric skateboards, those types of devices.
And are scooters that are broken into categories of those that go, oh, I think I already asked that question. Never mind.
Yeah, here it's asking that the devices be clearly labeled. Is that something that they come from the factory with, or will we need to provide some mechanism to label these devices appropriately?
So e-bikes are required to have classification and wattage on them. Other devices, I think the answer is it depends. It often will have that information from the manufacturer, but not always.
Anything can be modified.
Well, that's true. Yeah, there's no, kids with screwdrivers will do silly things, of course. But.
Anything else? No other questions? Anybody out there want to talk to us about this? Since you were here. Bob, you got your hand up. Why don't you go ahead real quick?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank the Active Transportation Advisory Commission and the chief for working on this. I think it was a well put together plan. It's a very difficult topic, as many of the older people just said, specifically defining the certain different scooter versus hoverboard versus e-bike. It's challenging. So I really appreciate the work they put into this.
Council, I spoke last time, and he stole my thunder, no pun intended. I was actually just going to Chief Flowers here and for allowing us to help draft the e-mobility ordinance. Like I said, it is very difficult to capture everything. Illinois state law does define an e-bike and an e-scooter. They do not define all the other dozen of one-wheels and unicycles, which is a great catch-all in this ordinance. I'm hoping Illinois will adjust the law for e-scooters, which sounds like they're doing, thankfully. But, after going back and forth, this with the 18-year-old, unfortunately for both classifications for the scooters, being more flexible on the e-micromobility since it's undefined, it's a great compromise for the time being. So, again, thank you so much for letting us be a part of this.
Thank you for being a part of it.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, and while we're waiting for that, just one last comment. Again, I do think this is a great compromise. I want to thank Chief Flowers again for modeling good community engagement on this. Once again, I think I said it last time, I'll say it again. I also want to reiterate the trust that we are putting a bit into the police department to implement this in a thoughtful way that emphasizes education over punishment, right? We of course have the punishment mechanisms when we need to use it, but I really am putting trust and faith in you, which I think is well deserved, to roll this out in a way that isn't as punitive as it could be. So thank you.
Yeah, I'm Regan Bull. I'm from the Active Transportation Advisory Commission as well. And again, I'll just echo what John said. It's great to work with the chief on this one. He heard us loud and clear. We heard him loud and clear. And we feel what we've come up with is perfect for this part of our city. One of the things I did want to express two is in regards to us developing this ordinance, is that we had some concerned members join us last night at our regular committee meeting, our commission meeting. And they were ready to discuss this topic, with, there's some folks that live down along the river path, and they wanted to tell us about what they've been seeing and things that we've discussed here about some of the issues that we've had with some of our e-bike folks here in town. And they were pleasantly surprised the progress that we've already made, that primarily the chief and the police department has made with our assistance and our input. So I wouldn't say that we kind of stunned them, but they were ready to fight. They were ready to really talk about the topic, and we were on it. And so I think that's a good representation of our community. And the fact that we're the only ones here to talk about it tonight, I think shows that we're going in the right direction. So I just want to reiterate that and thank the chief again. So thank you.
I'll say I would like to see us really push this out to the public this summer, with this ordinance coming through, and then really get out and educate the public on it. We have to draw in the school district, the park district, be at the farmers markets, be out there and be seen, so people realize that, this is another big responsibility, because if kids don't watch what they're doing, they're going to lose when they get hit by a 3,000-pound car. And that's my fear. I don't want to wait to see that happen. And, they need to realize the reality of, they can go 30 miles an hour on some of these, or out into traffic without any protection at all. And that's the scary part. And I think we got to make sure we educate them on.
Did we say we were going to do a 1-year implementation before we start fining people for this ordinance? I thought
we had talked about it, but I don't think we had decided to add that to it.
I guess the issue there is, in some cases, we do see some egregious behavior that we do think that deserves the penalties under here. But, I hope that we have your trust and faith that we're not going to be out, slapping fines on 12-year-old kids. That is going to be an education process. But where we see particularly adults who are utilizing these devices in a reckless manner, we are going to step in.
I'll make a motion that we adopt the ordinance as presented.
Second.
By Malone, second by Mr. White.
Bob White.
Yes. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And I think we should put that on the regular agenda and not in the consent, so we can talk about it.
Sure.
Thank you. Thanks for sticking around tonight. Okay, then
Maybe more from an education standpoint, as opposed to just rehashing specific things, just so the education.
What the realities of it are, what the requirements are, so that they know. I mean, not that kids are going to be watching the council meeting, but
maybe parents.
It's out there. All right, then up next is 7.4, which is ordinance 2026-008, amendments to Title 12, Historic Preservation City Code.
All right. So I've been working with the Historic Preservation Commission on some comprehensive amendments to Title 12. Most of those amendments are minor in nature, reflecting title and terminology updates across the entire Title 12. So in the red lines that are shown, it does look like a lot more changes are there. It's just mostly just updating Scott Buening's long title to Community and Economic Development Director. Other things that were updated in this were modifications to terms of office for chair and vice chair. Presently, it limits them to 2 terms of 1 year each. Where we've talked with the commission and they felt that updating this to allow a term of 2 years for each position would be beneficial, as it helps conduct more efficient business for the overall commission. There has been some modifications proposed to the application information and materials required, primarily removing the requirement for a legal description to be provided with an application. This is kind of a burden if there's no valid survey present for the property. Preparing a legal description can take a significant amount of time and money. We're able to effectively administer COAs with using the tax pin and address, so it's not necessarily needed for this process, and is something something that we haven't been requiring for quite some time. There are some other minor amendments that allow the Director of Community Economic Development to waive or require additional application materials. This is reflective with his powers within the zoning code in itself, so it's something that we already do in other applications before our department. Another item that was changed was allowance of some timelines. The way that the code was structured, it was saying that applications had to be heard before the commission within 15 business days. Realistically, there needs to be some level of review to make sure that the application is complete and in compliance with codes and plans. So once it is deemed complete by staff, then that time clock now will start as if adopted. So that's something that the commission was supportive of because they want to ensure that they are reviewing items that have been vetted, comply with code, and are truly a product that isn't going to change after their review. And then a few other minor things that were proposed were, should there be two subsequent meetings, two consecutive meetings canceled due to lack of quorum with the Historic Preservation Commission, staff is proposing a relief mechanism that an applicant could request the Committee of the Whole or City Council review their COA application at the next available meeting. We had some quorum issues about 2 years ago that created a lot of concerns and issues for business during our busy season. We don't foresee this being an issue moving forward with our current group of commissioners. However, with a comprehensive amendment, we felt it was appropriate. And to go hand in hand with this, the commission last night adopted a comprehensive approval matrix that allows staff to administratively approve several dozen types of COAs, where before we were limited to quite a minimal improvements. So that also will help make sure business goes forward in a timely manner for all of our property owners and businesses. And then one other small change to the process would be that the demolition process currently allows for non-designated and non-contributing properties and I guess secondary structures to waive the two-meeting process before the HPC. Staff has recommended that non-contributing structures go through the two-meeting process. That would allow more transparency and public feedback. So that would be the largest change to that process. So it would just be the second meeting would be required. So it allows members of the public to have a second meeting, an opportunity to speak for or against the demolition of a building within the district or a landmark. Otherwise, I believe I covered everything and I'm available for questions.
The demolition review for the non-contributing structures, I mean, just given that we're in the historical district, pretty much everything you think would be contributing is contributing. The non-contributing build be very non-contributing, right? So I'm wondering why they need to go through the two meetings.
So there actually are some instances of properties that likely the designation could change. The city has not reviewed the designations in quite some time. The commission does plan to revisit those. There are also some properties that are not designated. So as part of that review, there may be some change of properties. And, the commission felt that the two-meeting process truly is appropriate. It is in line with our neighbors. And it's more about public input and transparency in the process so that the commission felt that so someone couldn't accuse it as being fast walked, and pushed through. Nothing says that the commission isn't in support of it. It just, again, allows for the two-meeting process. They're both within the same, we meet twice a month.
Have we knocked down anything non-contributing since we knocked down that church over there? I'm not entirely sure on that. I'd have to defer to Scott and Jeff Albertson on that. The tin shop, I'm not sure what the designation on that was, but there are some homes that are within the district that are likely able to be designated as contributing, or some other structures as we peel back and find that
what's underneath some of the facade. They could be changed in designation. The former Full Moon or JT's is a prime example of that. I believe it's actually non-contributing today by designation because of what it had on the facade, but now with the facade being showing the original beauty of the building, it could be treated as contributing. So it's just an extra look. It's an extra 2-week approximately delay in the process. They're already within the district, so part of those conversations it would be upfront with those property owners of that timeline.
I believe the church Quonset hut that hasn't been torn down yet over here, I think that was not contributing. So, but that was a similar building.
Is what I'm understanding, that most of the undesignated properties will be treated as non-contributing properties. And with this that we're passing, those will get the 2-week, the 2-meeting review, right?
I believe so. I believe that's how the ordinance is written. Before it goes to city council, I can ensure that that is the case if that is the desire from the council. That being said, anything that is undesignated, the goal of the HPC is to have that designated this year. So that would be coming back to city council for final approval of any designation.
Great. Another question, last one. When they talked about meetings and changing them, did they bring up the fact of moving the time later to 6, 7? Did they mention that at all? Because that would give the community more access to come to the meetings and talk. It's my understanding they usually have maybe one person come, if that, and I think that person is part of another historical preservation organization, and they give their feedback. But it would be great to have it more accessible to the community so that they can come and give feedback in case the public has that. And I'm not sure what caused the members to not be able to make it to the meetings, but maybe it's easier for them too if they work until 5.
Yeah, so the commission has discussed meeting times previously, and they felt that their time at 5 o'clock actually facilitated and worked better with property owners and business owners for them to come with the CO, before to speak on their COA applications. There's two schools of thoughts, where yes, you could go later and that may allow for other public participation, but it also then would require some of these business owners, property owners, or their contractors to then come later in the evening, be paid at a higher expense, because it is later in the day. So that is some of the balance I think that they have considered.
Aren't most of these types of commissions, don't they happen after 5 o'clock in like our neighboring communities?
It depends. It really does vary with commissions across the area. Some meet at 5, some meet at 7. The Plan Commission and Zoning Board of Appeals meets at 7 p.m. here. That being said, we usually only have 1 or 2 people in the audience if we're lucky, unless it's a larger, more controversial topic. There are even some other communities such as, or the county, who have meetings during the day for their commissions, middle of the day, business day for their zoning board. So, public participation is fantastic. I wish more people would come and participate in these meetings. And that's something that we can look and explore. But as far as meeting times, they have discussed it and felt that the 5 p.m. does work for the commission's schedule, and they felt that it still facilitates business with the property owners and applicants.
When I was on historic preservation for a couple of years, I recall when we did move that meeting time, and others that had been on the commission for longer, and there was not a significant or even really noticeable change in the amount of 7 o'clock could be different, but there really wasn't a huge change in that. But also, I just wanted to say that I think also having shown up to meetings and not having a quorum and having some pretty high stakes development situations happening, or business owners where time is money, having to wait another 2 weeks or another 4 weeks even, challenging, and it did not do a lot for our reputation as, just our overall reputation as a city. It was really difficult and frustrating for business owners. So having a matrix so that staff can approve a bunch of COAs is great. And also being able to bring it here if they can't get a quorum, because it happened all the time. Like, it was very frequent. So I think it's a good.
We're on the topic of the coming to COW or council meeting. I think we should make sure that we have whatever data matrix, whatever we need to have to base our decision on, so we know, because I'm sure that they know on the commission exactly what they're going to go with. We need to have that in front of us, so that way, whoever, if we're going to review something, we should review it with the same criteria that the commission would do it. So we have the same information and the same criteria that we base our decision off of. So that way we're not making a decision that would be different than the commission might make.
Absolutely. And that would be included in any staff memo and all that information. And I do want to add to that. It's not an automatic where they can come. They have to, in writing, request to the Community Economic Development Director. And that director, whoever is in that position, would use their discretion to ensure that it is a valid request, that it's not something where they're trying to circumvent the commission. So this is something that they have to physically request to the director, and then the director would then accept that request and place it on an agenda.
Yeah, about how often are meetings canceled? I recall early on in my tenure here, it did seem pretty common. I was always seeing the memos, canceled due to quorum, canceled due to quorum. Let's say within the last 2025, how often did we not have quorum?
So cancellations due to quorum in 2025 was not generally the primary cancellation. Cancellations were generally due to no business. Staff, unless someone is waiting, and we know they imminently want to do work, we try not to also place one item on an agenda. For the sake of everybody's time, to have everybody come down here for 5 to 10 minutes for something, can be cumbersome and take a lot of time. But it was more of a 2024, 2023 cancellation for quorum. We recently had one this year. However, that was due to unforeseen circumstances. Some of our members were out of country in Mexico, so they were unable to get their flights back home. So. But again, since at least July, I think that would be our only instance of a cancellation due to quorum.
Yeah, and is it fully volunteered up right now? Are all the seats filled?
So we have 6 commissioners. It's a 7-commission body. So we do have 1 vacancy that would need to be filled.
So switching gears just a little bit, it's good to hear that we're doing sort of a review to make sure that our undesignated buildings become designated in one capacity or another. I do wonder, have there been more talks about the status of outbuildings? And I think the obvious reason I'm asking that is that we have a giant historic chimney that we've approved demolition on, which didn't have to go to historic preservation because it was an outbuilding, which is pretty clearly not the intent of the role. So are we considering reclassifying outbuildings or figuring out how to handle outbuildings?
So there was a discussion with the commission, and Phil Buss, who was the previous chair and has several decades of experience both with King County and preservation here with the community, suggested that in our review of properties, should there be components of the structure or secondary structures, accessory structures on the property that they believe are truly significant or contributing, to identify that as a factor of why a property has classifications, so that in the report it has additional weight, and that the general commission was receptive to that. So as they review and update supporting factors for why the designation exists, they would be looking to do that. So while the chimney at the challenge property is actually more integrated into the overall building construction, they would likely update their description and factors to call out that chimney as a reason to why they classified it with how it is in the designation.
All right, thank you.
Anybody else? Pop's hand's not up. Okay, then we need a motion to recommend to council Ordinance 2026-008, amendments to Title 12, Historic Preservation of the City of Batavia Code.
So moved.
And Bowman. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. That can go on consent. Okay. Let's see, we got like 14 more minutes? No, 20 minutes. We'll go on to discussions of holiday decorations.
Hopefully I will make this quick. But for those of you that are unaware, the city's electric division installs all of our holiday decorations, all the greenery, the wreaths, puts all the trees up around town. And this past season, I know I obviously am new to this role, but I have heard it for a while that we have a lot of other work to be doing. It's definitely not a favorite thing for the electric division to be doing. So this year they took accounts of all the work that they had done and how much time they spent installing the wreaths, going from setting it up in the yard and the Christmas trees that we put up that are hanging on island here are 3 trees, and they get hacked in the yard so that like they get sheared off on the back end so we can make 1 tree. They have to go and make many runs to Menards and stuff to make sure that the lights are all there. We're using the C9 bulbs, not necessarily outdoor rated, but, and then they're also coming out on call to be doing any types of repairs. This year was pretty noticeable where we had a lot of outages with the wind or whatever it was. So all of that totaled, and we have about 90 streetlights that either get wrapped with the garland, have the wreaths put on it, or I think about 24 poles that we have with the Christmas trees. We have the mayor's tree. We do one out on Clark Island. That all adds up to about 800 hours of time. And so
I wanted to mention, Andrea, I've watched them, dress one of the poles with the trees on it. Each one of those takes 45 minutes, and there are 3 people there.
Yeah, so it's like 8 hour, almost 8 man hours per thing when you take into consideration the prep work and stuff like that we have Seth out in the warehouse kind of organizing that. And between Seth and I, we order all of that through Wisconsin. So one of the items we have talked about is potentially looking at contracting this out. There are contractors in the area that do this type of work. Steve put together pricing, and I've looked at a few that I was able to find, and I'm just starting some research, but I wanted to bring it to you guys because this is not something that is a quick decision. It's not something that's fast either. It's time consuming, and we want to do what's best and stuff. So the prices that Steve came up, if we were to contract out with the truck cost, although it's just the manpower that we're paying right now. But those costs are in line with what other cities are paying to do that. And in the meantime, electric is getting more behind on the work that they can be doing. There's 2 stacks on Moose's desk of halfway engineered projects. And those are all capital projects that need to get out in the field to be completed. And every year that we're doing this, they're losing 1/12 of their year with Christmas decorations. We can't have streets do this because it's at the same time that they're doing the leaf collection. Water has a lot of other things going on. So that's why we're kind of looking at this and wanting to explore what's out there. And I started looking, and I have books here too. Gary's name is on a bunch of these, but we are getting just different types of things, whether or not they, and just looking at changing up things and or seeing what vendors can do. And I've been in contact with someone. They're working on maintenance stuff right now, landscaping, but I'm hoping to speak to them in April to kind of figure out what they might be able to do, but, you know, like they have things here that have garland that is actually color instead of just like the snowflakes that are out there without them, or they're just metal frames, so you'd be able to see them during the day with a little bit of festivity, as well as then they're illuminated in the evening. Some of the websites that I was looking at and I ran across and I was able to find, just in my brief search, was Wheeling and New Lenox. They do the lighted displays. Wheeling has a lot of Christmas trees wrapped, 4,000 strands of lights. They RFP that out and got some pricing, and they have everything that's in multiple people's brains and in their heads memorialized in their RFP, showing what everything is and where that's to go. And then they did it for a 3-year term. New Lenox, I'm still looking into that and in contact with them. They have like the 3D stuff, which that would not fit with the city's property, but we might be able to partner with the park district on that. I did. Oh. It was up here before, Laura.
It was up there before.
Oh, here we go.
For you?
All right.
Oh, you got it.
I need to share this, so.
Yeah.
So again, this is just to kind of show you, these were some of the different things that I ran across in catalogs. We currently have some of these snowflakes out there. I think there's 8 to 10 of them on the bridge, and they alternate with patterns. Again, here's that garland that's colorful, and then you illuminate it. They have different things, and then further down, I was able, we have to start over again. It does not want to let me go. So, well, that's an epic fail, but technology, right? It's thinking. Wheeling has a corner with all the trees lit, and they have a little bit different than what we have, but we do not put lights in our trees like we do on River Street. So that is an option that we could potentially be looking at. We're also working with Upland, and we'll be back at the beginning of April to kind of go over some streetscape things with our trees and our tree grates and electric issues that we're having going on there, and providing some ideas. And they might have some decorations as well, or lighting, artistic lighting that we can put throughout that stretch of street, and then eventually have a cohesive downtown where we expand that streetscape vision, including plantings and all that. So we thought this would be a good time to look at Christmas and see if it's something that council would be interested in having us look at, so we can plan potentially this year and or at least next year when we're going out for budget stuff. So.
Steve, get numbers?
Get numbers for?
Like what it would be?
Estimated range. What are we talking about?
So it's about $100,000.
Okay. So my question is, and don't get me wrong, we don't want able-bodied electricians who need to be out doing electrical work doing Christmas decorations if we don't have to. But for more money, a lot of people will do more things. And if they have been offered it, or if we can take 75,000 of 100 and say, team, we'll split this up between you guys if you still want to do it. If not, okay, we'll go out and, throw out an RFP or whatever. But I get it. If they haven't been incentivized and they're like, oh, we got to go do the Christmas decorating, this isn't what we do,
Some of it is that, but there's also all this workload that they have. So for example, we have the basics of our GIS asset management. You have transformer A, transformer B. It's 3-phase power, so there's 3 lines going from one to the other. You have to label each of those inside the transformers, so there's 6 labels on each, 3 on one and 3 on the other. You go to the other side of the transformer, there's another 3, and that's throughout the city. That project has not really kicked off, and that's just our basis for what we're looking to go into ViewWorks and getting all of this stuff in there. Polls were done by Osmos for the rating of the systems a couple years ago, so there's still, with all the new development, there's probably Moose gave me 20% of the poles don't have labels on them. Again, these are IDing our assets in the field and tying them back to things, and that's the basis. The maps aren't correct. There's multiple versions of the same area, and they're not updated. And all of our linemen can go out there and mark that up and then come back in the office and share it. There's endless amounts. That's just like the tip of the iceberg. And so is it?
No, I totally understand. I'm just trying to, rationalize. So if it, if it takes a month, so we're taking a 12th of, that's what you said, right? A 12th of our entire electric, and everybody works on that? I mean, obviously I don't want Moose up on the truck hanging.
No, it's not Moose.
Lights.
It's the linemen.
Yeah, right. So we have all of our linemen tied up for a month.
Unless there's an emergency where they have to pull off, but yeah.
But that's their main job every day for a month, is to go in and do Christmas lights.
Yeah, and this year we just actually lost 2 linemen, and effective Monday, Moose will move back into engineering, and Eric Sandoval will be taking over as operations. He's one of our crew leaders in electric, and he's going to be taking over electric operations, so we're backfilling and training. And we'll see where that takes us.
And I totally trust you. I was more or less spitballing, because what I don't want, is like, they're like, wait a minute, they went out and spent $100,000 on this? We would have done it for $100,000, or like whatever. And obviously I would look.
I think they would prefer doing lineman work. It's really not their favorite thing to do.
Employees are the asset, and this is asset management is kind of what I'm thinking about. Do I want somebody that we're paying $135,000 to be out there just hanging lights up, rather than going out and improving and maintaining a system?
Why did we do it at all?
On? What?
Why did we do it at all? No, I'm dead serious. Why have we been doing it for so long?
If you don't do it, you're going to have one hell of a crowd in this room.
Why did we put that on our electric department?
Somebody's got to do it.
It used to be a simpler thing, and then
someone's got to do it if you can pay for
It's been
it.
that way for 50,
It's
60
the way
years.
it's always been, is what I'm hearing.
Right,
That's why it's been done that way.
And
So
the year you don't want to do it, I will promise you, you'll have a crowd in this room like you've never seen before.
I couldn't agree with you more, but we draw crowds for less, so bring them in.
Just, because of the time that we're at right now, what I would love to see moving forward is for us to get what the cost is to get a contractor compared to what we're paying our guys for a month. And then also bring back to us what the top 3 recommendations if we were to purchase new things for us to decide. Because we could sit and debate this all night, but we just need to make a decision. Like, we just need to put something up, and we just need to put something nice up, and we need to decide, are we doing a contractor? Are we using our staff? Are we using what we currently have? Or are we getting something new? And that's what I would like to do.
We just wanted to know, was City Council open at looking at other decorations? Or do we feel like these decorations that we've done for years, they're like, absolutely don't change?
Bring staff's top 3 along with what it would be to do a contractor for the trees.
Because I do know that like the snowflakes, Steve says, those aren't that difficult. If we were to get some of these types of things that go on the post, that might be able to be feasible in-house with a lot less time.
Do one red tree.
Lehman?
And something to consider is on the post, do something like snowflakes that can be up from December through February or whatever the months are. Because right now we're switching out midwinter, and that's very time consuming. So maybe on the post it's snowflakes, and then we do Christmas trees in other parts in town where we're not having to climb up on poles to do
the winter decorations versus the more Christmas decorations.
More Krampus. That's all I got to say.
Okay, well, I will look at some other vendors and see what I can come up with numbers, but I just wanted to get an idea if this was something. I'm not looking to take it necessarily down, but just looking to see if we can enhance or still be able to get decorations out, but have our electric utility be able to be utilized for the skills that they're here for. So,
It really is a good point that Leah makes too, though. I mean, just to pay attention to the labor costs, because we know it's not the decorations that cost all the money, right? It's the labor. So, less trucks, less up on lifts or whatever. I mean, anything you guys can think of creatively.
and I have been in contact with a company that's in Warrenville, and I will be back in touch with them, but they do it where they come out, they design it, they install it, they maintain it, they're on call, have to repair it within 24 hours, and they take it back and they store it, because that's also another question as to, like the greenery, we just put it in the chipper at the end of the season, and the snowflakes get stored, but if we were to purchase this stuff, then we'd have to figure out where to store it, but if there's contractors out there that do the whole show, the whole 9 yards, install and take it down, that's ideal too.
Then they have to do everyone's house.
So, all right, I will come back in another month or two, sometime before budget, to give you guys some more feedback. Thank you.
Now we have 7.9 minutes to discuss the ordinance on public urination and defecation, which I was really shocked that we did not have this already on as an ordinance. I mean, I didn't think that was something we had to think about. I just figured that was there the whole time.
Yeah, so ordinance 26-12 has kind of been a gaping hole in our code of ordinances, something that needed to be addressed. I appreciate Alderperson Fehrenbach actually bringing it up recently and bringing it to our attention. Really just looking to regulate unsanitary acts in view of the public or on public areas. I know that Alderperson Lohman had expressed some concern about the high fine structure, so I'd like to turn the floor over to you if I could.
Yeah. Yes, I just wanted to ask about the fees that we've got in place here. Reading it through, it just seemed that we were unnecessarily making the second offense really high. What comes to mind is individuals that would do this type of thing for different reasons, right? But some of them might have mental health issues or are unhoused. And so I would like to think that our town wants to prioritize providing supportive services and more of the community policing that we've been talking about to individuals that might need those extra supports. And so to me, it's viewing it as criminalizing, the unhoused and possibly giving them more barriers to their housing. So I just had a concern about it, and I wanted to ask you if this is in line with other towns and if we could lower it. I mean, we just talked about another ordinance today with the e-mobility, and those fines were significantly lower. And I understand the difference here. This is damage of property, right? Whereas over there, it could be reckless behavior that could be even, could be deadly. So they're different things, but I just felt that the fees were a lot higher, especially with this in mind with the, e-mobility, which is different, but.
Yeah, and we're open to a modification of the fine structure. I did try to find a couple of other municipalities in the area just to get a feel for where these fines fall in line with other agencies. St. Charles is identical to what is proposed here. Their first offense is $250. Second offense is up to $750, which essentially means that person's going to be sent to court and a judge will set the fine amount there. Could be ranging anywhere from, the $250 up to $750, which is the maximum amount they'd be eligible to be fined. Elgin was notably lower. Their first offense was $100 with a second offense listed at $250. So like I said, we're open to modifying if council desires a lower fine structure, but certainly want to make sure that this is something that we have on the books so that we're able to have that enforcement mechanism available.
And Chief, also, if you were to have somebody who violated any of our statutes, but you also recognize that either homelessness and or mental illness was an issue there, we would use our AID resources to connect them with social services to help to address those issues for them, right?
We absolutely try to look at this from a humanitarian issue, make sure that we're linking people with those resources, with the shelters in our area that provide housing for people. So we're always focused on that aspect of things as well, certainly, but still need to be able to have a tool in our tool belt to enforce and prohibit this sort of undesirable conduct.
Have we had any instances of these in this past year?
Yes.
Do you know how many?
Not offhand, I don't.
Ballpark?
Maybe 2 to 3.
Yeah, and there, so when we talk about these instances too,
Jim, we got other people that had their hand up from
sorry,
before.
yes,
Robin?
Just to clarify too, also, if an officer was to encounter someone who had done something like this and determined that there was a mental health or the discretion to not necessarily have to issue a citation, correct?
Correct. The warnings are always an option, even a verbal warning, and just, if it's something where we need to link somebody with some sort of service or work with them in some other manner, certainly that is an available option, and our officers are regularly making those decisions on a daily basis.
One other thing I would say is St. Charles probably has.
Put your mic down a little bit.
I would say St. Charles probably has a higher fine structure because of all like the late night bar activity and stuff that they have on the weekends. They probably have a lot more repeat offenders, and I would be in favor of maybe lowering it a little bit.
I agree that the fine structure is a bit insane, in my opinion. I mean, I remember when a city ordinance was $20. I mean, this is to try to prevent people from doing this. It's not to make people so they can't make a car payment or a mortgage payment and they're not going to be able to pay rent that month. I think it's ridiculous for just peeing somewhere, number one. Number two, when I was reading the ordinance, it also applies to if you are basically peeing in your yard. I think that's ridiculous too. I mean, this is supposed to be something where you don't want somebody walking out of a bar and peeing in an alley. So I think it's way overly broad, number one. And I think that the amount of the fine where you could basically say, okay, I can't make a car payment this month is just out of line with I just remember city ordinances like a $20 fine. So we'll leave it at that.
Yeah, the fines should be lowered. I agree with Robin. I mean, it is a little excessive. I will say it's not just number one, it's also number two. And when that does happen, property owners, you have to clean it up. So that's the reason for the increase in the second offense. From what I'm familiar with, unfortunately, there are people where this is a thing, right? So it does make sense to have a graduated fee schedule.
Yeah, echo. It does feel a little aggressive on the fee structure side. I'm wondering, is it possible for us to codify the discretion of the officer? As written, it doesn't appear. I know the discretion is sort of inherent, but one of the worries folks have when interfacing with the police, and I know our police are particularly good, is that sometimes that discretion is misapplied to different populations. Not our officers. I think we have an incredible framework, but is there a way for us to codify a little more firmly the concept of discretion for the officer if it's a young kid walking home from school who does something stupid versus, the drunk frat boy versus the, chronically unhoused individual who needs some serious help, right? I kind of want that to be a little more granular and focused. Is that possible within an ordinance?
So the way I'm hearing it is almost, correct me if I'm wrong, please, but maybe the opposite of discretion in that we're trying to decide for the officer when they would and wouldn't cite somebody under different circumstances. Is that correct?
Well, I was actually thinking language that says at officer's discretion, a first offense may be issued. It's as simple as that, right?
As opposed to going to the second offense?
As opposed to it saying, a first offense shall be, right? I just kind of want it, or maybe this is a training component, maybe, a training component where we can make sure that our officers are trained well enough to, know that discretion is there and to apply it appropriately.
And we do. I mean, there is a very lengthy field training period that each new officer goes through with a very experienced officer in order to learn just those types of things.
I mean, you're speeding, you're breaking the law. But if you're only 6 miles an hour over the limit and it's the first time you've ever been pulled over at 16, sometimes I don't think the officer is going to write that ticket, and that's really determined on the situation.
Right.
So, I mean, I think we just leave that there. That's their job. That's what they're paid to do, and, you know, they know the expectations of what the job entails.
The challenge is that there's a large perception, justified or not, that discretion is oftentimes misused. And so, and especially when we're talking about an ordinance targeted at a population that has historically been on the wrong side of that discretion, right? Homeless folks without homes being locked up intentionally being fined, that, you know, I do want us to make sure that we are being a little more intentional. You know, speeding's one thing because you bought a car and you have some assets. Sleeping under the bridge and getting a ticket is a very different sort of framework and a different type of person. So I want to make sure that we're just being a little more intentional when we create ordinances that specifically target folks who are vulnerable, right? Who have challenges.
As a department, I don't think it happened while you have been on city council, but it was prior to you being on city council that our police department adopted a 10 points of equity that was established between the Illinois Chiefs Association and the NAACP, and that runs through everything that they do, whether it is creating codes, enforcing codes, training. Those 10 points are very much in front of the officers as they perform their work in the community.
And I think our officers have been exemplary in that. Again, I don't want to make it clear, but I hope that carries through.
Thank you for bringing that up. It's the 10 shared principles.
10 shared principles.
Nancy?
Yeah, I just, want to make a point not to lump our police department or Batavia for that matter into any national conversation perceived or anything without some facts there. And I don't think anything like that has happened in the city of Batavia. So not to my knowledge, not to, I'm sure, the chief's knowledge, but I highly doubt you're going to be discriminating on folks on something like this. And I think honestly, if you write in there in language that your discretion is up for, that it's up to your discretion, I think honestly, I maybe want to look at a legal mind, but that might even be counterproductive to the police officers. But I see no evidence of our police officers in Batavia being anything but equal, and it's written down.
I'm going to ask, the previous instances of public defecation that you've noticed, has that been adjacent to homelessness, or is it more just incidental people leaving, say, a drinking establishment, for instance?
Defecation specifically is generally unhoused persons.
It's on what?
Unhoused persons.
It is, okay.
Yes. Urination, certainly, with the late night bar scene, things like that, it can span demographics.
With the new River Street Plaza, that will be helpful to our community for hopefully avoiding these instances. I was looking up Aurora's fines, and I'd like to suggest that we do something similar to theirs. It says not less than $100 and not more than $500. They don't specify the first offense or the second offense, but I just wanted to put that out to have something to think about for council, if you guys would be okay with that, so it's not as high as $750, which is what was in the current one.
I don't personally like that, because now we're leaving some discretion in there, right? Who's going to decide the amount and why?
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you. What I meant was when we're thinking about the number, not to be more than 500. Thank you for bringing
for
that
sure.
up. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I was going to say the same thing. Actually, our officers prefer having an established fine schedule so they know exactly what to write the citation for. When there's gray in there, that's when there's concerns.
Do we have anybody want to make a change to the fine structure? I mean,
100-250.
I think that makes it less punitive and more constructive, but also if somebody decides they're going to leave the bar at 2:00 every Saturday morning and walk out and do something time and time again, they're going to get fined for it.
Yeah, plus at your second time, 250 is not, I mean, that's tough.
250 is not cheap.
Yeah, 250
is not cheap.
That's a speeding ticket.
At that point, that's the reason why they're doing it, because they don't know what they're doing.
I can make that change to the ordinance and then bring that to council on Monday.
Or can we motion an amendment, vote on it tonight?
Tonight,
and
when
then
we
you can just come
recommend to council, we could do that, and then you make that change if that's what we want. If somebody wants to make that.
So I'll make the motion to amend the ordinance to change the fee structure to 100 for first offense, 250 for second offense.
Not a fee, it's a fine.
Fine. I say,
We don't want to tell somebody.
blame it on my voice. Blame it on my voice.
Up to.
Okay.
Up to $100.
All those in favor of?
$250, please.
Go ahead, Bob.
Sorry, when you make that amendment, please make it up to $100 as a first offense and up to $250 as a second offense, in order to give the officers discretion, as we've discussed.
No, that's not what we just talked about, that's not something that works well with the officers, because then it's all about discretion and not about a structured amount that they know that they have.
The discretion comes between warning and fine.
Yeah, that's the discretion.
Correct.
Yep. Did you get that, Bob?
I gotcha.
Okay. So first we have the vote on the motion to change the fee, or the fine structure to 100 and 250.
100 and 250.
100 and 250. Okay.
And Alice seconded.
And Al second. Okay. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Now we need a motion to recommend to council ordinance 2612, public urination defecation as amended.
So moved.
Second. Motion by Lancy, second by Malone. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And you have negative 6 minutes to give your update.
Okay, I'll give it like an auctioneer. There are a couple programs that we wanted to promote tomorrow on March 11th from 2 o'clock to 2:30 at Batavia Public Library. There is an internet safety presentation. It is free, but you need to register. You can go to our site and it links to the page on the Batavia Library site where you can sign up for that class. Again, that's tomorrow from 2 o'clock to 2:30 p.m. at Batavia Public Library. Also, our wonderful ESDA organization is doing an emergency preparation class so that you and your family can be prepared in cases of emergency. That class will be held on March 19th from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. at Fire Station 2. That is on the west side, right across from Batavia High School. Again, it's a free class for everyone, but registration is required. That's March 19th from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. Community and Economic Development is reviewing 23 submittals they got in response to the downtown building condition RFP. And so they are reviewing those, and we'll bring that back to council at the beginning of April. And we've also received 16 submittals for the Economic Development Strategic Plan, and they're in the process of reviewing those submittals as well. Human Resources has been very, very busy assisting multiple departments with open positions, including Public Works seasonal employees, lineman apprentice, and external journeyman lineman positions, as well as doing interviews for the community engagement intern position, as well as an engineering assistant civil engineer position for engineering. Public Works, the H. Michael Wild Park project is underway. Right now, they're doing invasive tree clearing. Just wanted to remind everyone that this project is being made possible from a GIGO grant that we received for $500,000 and is being done in cooperation with the Batavia Park District, who of course own the property on which this this run of of Mahoney Creek goes through there. So we interviewed 7 candidates for the open 2 police officer positions, and 2 conditional offers have been extended. The open positions in fire, they actually have exhausted their current list, and so they're going to need to generate a new list and do testing here in the next couple of months. On police, they've started using that DACRA e-ticketing system last week, and the officers' initial feedback has been extremely positive in using that system. And that's all that I have. If anybody has any questions for me.
Any questions? I have one. You just mentioned the new system and everything. When somebody feels really confident with their new camera and the translation part of it, I'd like to see a demonstration. If anybody else wants to see it, I'd like to see it here so we can show it off to the public in general that this is how it works. And
Yeah, we were planning to bring the translation tool to council for a demonstration. I'd heard you mention that at a recent COW meeting.
Right.
So definitely something that we're working on. Take a look, try to find a light agenda and add that to the agenda. I can tell you that our officers have used it a number of times in the field already, and I've heard that it's working quite well. So we've translated Chinese, Russian, and Spanish so far. So.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, then all I need is a motion for adjournment. Second. All those in favor? Aye.